ritualistically humiliate them. Humiliate them!
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, and Cenk is out again, but he'll be back tomorrow. We have Francesca Fiorentini and JR Jackson for hour one today. What's up, guys?
Hey.
I've been just trying to say quid pro quo as fast. See, I can't even do it. Quid pro quo, quid pro quo.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think I've ever said this on the show. Every time I hear quid pro quo, I think of The Hangover, where I forget the name of the character, but he says quid pro quo, mother effer, and so like that always like plays in my head.
Ooh, we need that.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a gif.
It's really good.
Not only is it hard to say quickly, try typing it really fast.
Quid pro quo, quid pro quo.
If you type it, you're gonna
I'm
mess
just
up.
saying crow.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm good.
We have a lot of great news to cover today. Some good news in regard to the elections that took place yesterday. So I don't want to waste any time. Why don't we get right to it? Democratic candidates in major local elections won yesterday, and this is a really big deal because it does make a statement when it comes to Donald Trump, his popularity, and how much sway he has on these local elections. So let's start off with the great state of Virginia, where Democrats were able to flip the state to their advantage. In Virginia, Democrats reclaimed control of the state's General Assembly for the first time in 2 decades, building on big gains the party made just a year after Trump took office. When Trump took office, Democrats held just 33 of 100 seats in the state's House of Delegates. Come January, they will hold as many as 55. In the state Senate, Democrats won at least 21 out of 40 seats, meaning that the state legislature consists of majority Democrats.
Incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. Very, very good news. And then there was also great news out of Kentucky. Now, Republicans in Kentucky were really hoping that they could sway the gubernatorial race in their direction by nationalizing that race. So you had Governor Matt Bevin, who is the Republican incumbent, running against Beshear, the Democrat in the state. And it's incredible because Matt Bevin was not popular by any means. He was not polling well. And part of the reason why was because he was constantly going after the powerless in his state, namely the teachers who had decided to strike because there was some talk about their pensions not being properly funded. So they strike, and then Matt Bevin thinks it's a great idea to come out and say things like this.
You know, here's what's crazy to me. You know how many hundreds of thousands of children today were left home alone? I guarantee you somewhere in Kentucky today, a child was sexually assaulted that was left at home because there was nobody there to watch them. I guarantee you somewhere today, a child was physically harmed or ingested poison because they were home alone, because a single parent didn't have any money to take care of them.
So he went out there and he demonized these teachers who were essentially gonna get screwed when it came to their own pensions. And remember, we're talking about teachers. We're talking about people who are severely underpaid as it is. And he goes out there and he blames them for being accessories to terrible things like sexual assault.
Yeah, can I just say that no one suggests that a child who is at home from school will be sexually assaulted or poisoned unless they're a pedophile. So I'm pretty sure Bevin has sexually, I don't know, maybe he's thought about it, but no one's like, oh yeah, home from school. I'd be like, you get to watch cartoons, you like ride some bikes, and he's like, they're gonna be touched. And you're like, no.
It was weird that his mind went there. And I remember at the time when we covered that story, it was in 2018, I said that. I was like, I find it strange that his mind automatically goes there. That's not the way a normal person thinks.
Yeah, if you support him, you'd stop and go, man, I believe in Matt, what he's saying. Well, not that part. Where'd that come
Right.
from? And also, since he's so concerned with kids being home alone with single parent households and whether or not they can get to school every day, is he worried about maybe funding for school lunches? They can eat enough because a single parent household maybe not make enough. Also, during the summertime, is he passing legislation to fund some kind of oversight for kids when they're on summer vacation, maybe spring break, winter break, things like that when people have to work constantly and their kids are home alone? It's not just that day where kids are home alone, and parents are confronted with what to do with their children for daycare.
It was his way of, I don't know, attempting a guilt trip on these teachers who absolutely should have gone out there. They should have done the strike. I'm glad that they did it. But Matt Bevin loved to go after the powerless in Kentucky. For instance, he was very supportive of the law. He was proposing a law where you would have to work in order to receive Medicaid, right? And so that was wrapped up in the courts, but it's just another example of something that led to his level of or lack of popularity in the state. Now let's go to the election and what actually happened. In Kentucky, Attorney General Andy Beshear declared victory over Governor Matt Bevin by just over 4,600 votes out of more than 1.4 million cast, an apparent upset election in one of the more conservative states in the country. Now, just to give you an idea of how much of an upset this really is, 4 years ago, Bevin defeated his Democratic rival by about 85,000 votes. And in Jefferson County, the most populous in the state, Beshear beat Bevin by almost 100,000 votes, more than twice as large as the margin by which Bevin's 2015 opponent won it. Beshear almost doubled the 2015 Democratic nominee's performance in Fayette County, home of Lexington. So this is a big deal. And look, Bevin thought, well, here's the thing. Kentucky is an interesting state, right? Because Kentucky will elect Democratic local politicians, but on a federal level, they're not happy with Democrats. And so they have latched onto Trump partly because Trump has this populist economic message. Like, we all know he's lying, but positioning himself as like this populist has really resonated with the conservative voters in Kentucky. And so what did Bevin do? He asked Donald Trump to basically rally for him in Kentucky, and that's exactly what he did on Monday. We have a short clip of that. Let's take a look.
Tomorrow, Kentucky has a chance to send the radical Democrats a message. You will vote to reject the Democrats' extremism, socialism, and corruption, and you will vote to reelect Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, who's done a great job. Now, he is difficult, I have to say, maybe it cost him the election, but it's okay. Here, look. He's such a pain. When he needs something for Kentucky, like money, like aid, like he wants me to call one of the many manufacturers now that are coming into Kentucky. Could you call the head of some company in Japan, please? I say, Matt, do I have to do it? Please, please. But isn't that really what you wanted, a governor? That's what you want. He's such a pain in the but that's what you want.
That is the president of the United States. But look, Bevin's attempt to nationalize that race didn't work. It wasn't good enough. So the economic populist message that came from Beshear out-trumped Donald Trump's rally and Bevin's attempts to nationalize that race.
Bevin was sitting on the sidelines. There was a camera shot that we didn't have there where he's sitting there and he was going, how could you do this to me?
I know.
No, the whole time he's sitting there going, yeah, man. Such a pain. How does that work? Okay, so again, we just talked about last week how, or maybe earlier this week, when Trump was going after California over the wildfires and going after the governor here, Newsom. Oh my God, he wants all this money. I'm gonna pull that money because you guys don't listen to me. I thought you just said that's a pain for Matt Bevin to be bugging you all the time to beg for money and beg for this and beg for that. But somehow California, with a natural disaster that's happening, normal funding for things that help citizens of this country, that's not good enough. But this guy begging for money so he can make sure companies come in he can give tax breaks to while he screws over the people of the state, that's an okay thing? Which one? It's because he supports you and this other one doesn't. It all comes down to that.
100%.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, first of all, that entire claim, like, don't you want someone who's a sycophantic loyalist? Hey, like, no, you don't want that.
So
like,
weird.
But this defeat of Bevin, I think, shows a number of things. And to your point about Bevin trying to nationalize Trump's victory, Trump's message, to sort of like, latch onto his coattails and say this still works in 2019, did absolutely fail. And it shows that the message around radical socialism, it's falling on deaf ears because people don't actually understand what is being said. Like, all right, are there re-education camps yet? Like, when do I go? Do they got health care? Because I'm talking about health care. It turns out that's what Bashir is talking about.
Yes, exactly.
He is talking about health care. Yep. He is against these Medicaid work requirements. He is for keeping Medicaid expansion. And then I think it's really important that it's not just Bevin's miscalculation in terms of whether he, brought Trump in at the wrong time, which is like such a gamble. Like, hey, let's bring senile old grandpa in here to sort things out. Like, whoa. But it shows that like organizing the teachers, organizing works. Kentucky Education Association, the Kentucky Education Association knocking on doors, that actually works. And I feel like a lot of the media, we're always like, okay, well, how does that have to do with DC or not? It's like, screw DC. This has to do with people on the ground, just like a victory like AOC's in Queens, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Or the Bronx. Why am I saying Queens?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That activism on a local level is incredibly effective. But also, I just want to note, and really hammer this point, because people keep arguing that Joe Biden should be the Democratic nominee for president because of his electability. But keep in mind that the one message, possibly the only message that resonates for voters across the ideological spectrum, is the economic populist message. It really is. Because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're working class or middle class, you are feeling the injustice of this economic system. So what Bashir did was incredibly savvy, incredibly smart. He stayed on message. There were multiple attempts to try to get him to attack Trump. And while I believe it's obvious that he's not a fan of Trump, he avoided doing that because he understood making that race about whether or not you support Donald Trump is essentially handing a victory to Bevin.
Because we've seen the way sometimes Trump supporters work. They don't care that he has bad policies. But with maybe other Republicans, again, in this case, Bevin, his bad policies are on full display. And then, there was, I think, the 4 of the 5 seats still stuck with Republicans they're talking about. And we'll talk about how Fox News was bragging about that and Trump Jr. was as well. But that's the thing. When people are dug in their smaller elections, smaller campaigns, they're still stuck with I got to go with Republicans because Republicans are best for me. But on the full state scale, when Bevin's running, you have to deal with everyone. And everyone is going to have to deal with seeing what this guy's doing for the entire state. And there's enough people that look up and say, this isn't working out for me. But so to take the lead for what Bashir did, you have to continue to push the truth narrative of what's really happening with policies. Because the rest of these guys have just as bad a policy as Bevin did. It's just they weren't put at such a large scale of the entire state. He's being the head of the state, his is put on blast. So smaller campaigns running for these other seats, make sure you point out the opponents, the same type of agendas they have that are very similar to Bevin's.
And then one other thing I wanted to point out. So in Kentucky, the voters tend to vote for both Republican and Democrat candidates, right? But on a national level, they have a great deal of disdain for Democratic members of Congress. I mentioned that, and I mentioned the relevance of that because what that means is they feel look, we already know the economic populist message resonates with them. They feel left behind by Democrats on a national level. So for the Democrats, the corporatists who are saying, oh, no, forget about the Warrens and the Bernies of the world. They're gonna cost us the election. We need a moderate, we need a centrist. Understand that the messaging coming from those types of candidates does not resonate with as many people. It just doesn't.
Absolutely, and I think you put the shoe on the other foot. Okay, running on pro-Trump, anti-impeachment doesn't work. So then the converse is true. Running only on the impeachment and only against Trump, Biden, doesn't work. It's not going to work to only make this a national thing. Go local, and I think we saw, some Democrats saying, oh, hey, look, healthcare wins, education wins. It's like, who are the candidates who are speaking about public education, expanding public education? Who are the candidates who are talking about expanding Medicaid and Medicare for all? Like these, it's not a philosophical conversation. It's not an ideological conversation. It is a stat-heavy, proven conversation that when you run on these bread and butter issues, you're gonna win.
Definitely. Now, let me go to a part of the story that could end up being disastrous if Democrats don't fight to maintain this clear win, okay? So in the state of Kentucky, you had Beshear, who was the attorney general in the state, beat the incumbent Republican gubernatorial candidate, Matt Bevin. Now, Beshear won by a slim margin, but he won. And now Beshear is, of course, saying he won, but then Bevin is saying, no, I'm not gonna concede, I'm not buying this at all. So as a result, you have some bad actors getting involved. Kentucky Senate President Robert Stivers threw another wrench into the state's razor-thin gubernatorial outcome late Tuesday night, saying that the legislature could decide the race. Stivers said based on his staff's research, the decision could come before the Republican-controlled state legislature. So they're gonna try to have Republicans in the state legislature decide who actually won, even though if you count the votes, the person who was the clear winner here was Beshear. Andy Beshear.
Where is the legality in that? Like, I'm not understanding what rock that law is hidden under. Isn't it? I thought it was supposed to be if you want to recount, you file a formal request to the judiciary, right, in the state.
We know that Republicans like to make up rules as they go along.
Right.
So let's actually hear from legal experts and what they have to say. So one legal expert from Brandeis School of Law says they can't just make them up. If the House and Senate were just to proceed on vague allegations without proof, that raises serious questions about disenfranchisement of voters who voted for Attorney General Beshear. It's an extraordinary proposition to suggest that the General Assembly would take vague allegations of unspecified irregularities and call into question a gubernatorial election.
Sounds similar to their president after he even won the election, still talking about the millions and millions of votes that were stolen by illegal immigrants. I'm not sure where he was pulling it all from, but every time you hear them accuse one group of doing what they're always trying to do, then you know to look at that source. Look at where that information is coming from. They'll probably have that down the pike to pull off anyway. So pulling out that one line, the disenfranchisement of the voters. When has the Republican Party cared about that?
Never.
From Voting Rights Act, from opposition to that, to literally tossing out votes from people or making sure the machines aren't counting votes the way that they should be. The irony is way too strong for them to continue to go out on this route, but they will anyway until someone actually calls them out and says, this is the Republican Party. There needs to be that level of strength in your statement.
Yeah. What's incredible about Republicans, both on a local and national level, is they know they can't win based on their messages, right? They know that they don't have any popular political positions to really run on and win on. And so they try to game the system to their advantage so they can literally cheat to win, right? They do it when it comes to changing voter ID laws. They do it when it comes to gerrymandering and drawing up districts in a way that puts them at an incredible advantage. Their ideas are unpopular. And what we need on the left is more of that firebrand, behavior, like the AOC-like behavior, where you call it what it is, you call it out. I just feel like Democrats overall haven't done a good job in calling it out, right?
Yeah.
They always play defense, they never play offense. I think it's time to play offense.
Yeah, the playbook a lot of times Republicans is fear. We talked about Bevin and the school agenda he had when teachers were striking. You pump fear first because our voters are fearful and they're gonna be motivated by fear and anger. So that's why he went with the, hey, kid's gonna get raped today. Then go, oh my God, kids are getting raped. Just go with the most extreme because your base is gonna be riled up by that. Then you go with voter suppression, then after you've lost that off voter suppression and fear, then you just subvert the whole process at the end of it all.
Well, and I think one of the ways, and I'm not sure I've seen Democrats come up with a skillful way to tackle the extreme racism and xenophobia that comes out of the right. Like I'm surprised actually that they went in Kentucky with the socialism rather than immigrants are coming for your jobs, which seems sort of like, that's like hit number one and it always kind of works and everyone dances to it. It's a terrible song. But the point is I think Democrats need not just an economic populist message, but also one that is inclusive, one that is anti-racist, and one that says, listen, all of these economic reforms help all of us, and they also primarily benefit people of color, working class people of color, and immigrants aren't stealing your jobs. It's corporations who aren't actually giving a fair shake to their workers, who are taking away money from public education. It's governors who take millions of dollars out of the public education system that is a threat to your job and your stability.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, just to give you an example of what I would do if I were playing offense, and that's at this point in the game, I really think it's the most important thing to do, is every time I suspect that anti-immigrant message is gonna come up, I'm gonna bring up the fact that Donald Trump hired foreign workers as soon as he got elected. It was the first thing he did. He raised the cap on foreign workers, and then Trump Properties immediately applied for over 70 foreign workers for their company, okay?
Absolutely.
What happened to America First? They're all lies, right? I would hit them with that before they can hit me.
There's so much hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
It's rich, you can hit it all.
So I remember when I was debating Ann Coulter at Politicon, someone in the audience who I knew was unfortunately seated around a bunch of her fans. And I brought up that thing about the foreign workers, and apparently a few of them were like, "Wait, is that true? Is that real?" They don't know. They don't know because it's not information that's ever given to them.
Of course not.
By the media that they watch, certainly. So anyway, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to give you Donald Trump's reaction to what happened in Kentucky last night, and then some other great developments that might have fallen through the cracks. If you're not paying close attention, I want to give you the details on that and more when we return.
Now baby move that fat, baby move that fat. We thugged out.
What's J&A?
Ja'Cory and Arthur.
You guys share a mug?
Yeah, you both take our hot cocoa black.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plus, I'm right-handed and Arthur's left-handed, so our lips wouldn't even touch the same area. It's perfect.
No, I'm not left-handed.
What do you mean? I've seen you type with your left hand.
Yeah, and also with my right hand. That's how typing works.
So this is what democracy looks like.
When I think back to the debates in 2016, this was a very different party that was debating.
First time in my lifetime that I've actually had progressives represent us.
Bernie Sanders has changed the arithmetic.
This whole debate tonight was shaped by progressives.
We have to live our values every day in a campaign.
She came with receipts. That was her strongest moment by far.
This is going to be one of the best primaries we've ever seen.
This is what we've been saying would happen, and now it's playing out on the debate stage.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
We are onto something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I should have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring. I love when we play that music, that coming back from break music, because it reminds me of Anchorman every time.
That particular tune?
65% of the time it works every time.
Oh, it seems somber and like bedtimey.
It sounds like a 70s era, like, you know what I mean? Elevator music type thing.
Yeah, someone definitely got groped to that music.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
All right, a few member comments and then a few announcements. Colorado Blue Blazer Regular writes in and says, Franny is in the house with 4 exclamation marks, I believe, yes. A great panel with Anna and JR, and now Franny too, what a Wednesday. Do you like being called Franny?
No, I'm just kidding. You can call me Franny, just don't call me Fran. Just don't call me late.
I never remember which one it is. I always get confused because Anna was giving you trouble last time. Whether it's Franny or Fran, I was like, which one is the best?
You gotta earn a lot to call me Fran.
Without even asking for permission. Like no one gave me permission. I just started calling her Fran, and she was like,
You're already gonna be the godmother of my children, right, Anna?
Sure.
We're best friends. All right, I'm done.
All right. Nipple Pierce Jank in skinny jeans writes in and says, I don't think people understand if Bevin is not governor, he will be left at home unprotected against abuse and poisoning. I hope you're all happy now.
Yeah, also Jank has a nipple ring, so your joke
he doesn't.
Really work.
Actually, I don't know and I don't wanna know.
He might.
Okay. Super inappropriate. All right, so let's move on to a few announcements. Cal Penn will be joining us on both the conversation and the Friday Power Panel. So make sure you check that out. So as you know, our Friday Power Panel will air as usual at our usual time. And then Cenk will have a conversation with him to follow. They're gonna talk about Sunnyside on Netflix. He also previously served in Barack Obama's White House as Assistant Director of Social Engagement and is known for his roles in Designated Survivor, House, and Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't ask him about White Castle. I feel like it's one of those things, just don't bring it up. It's too old, he's done other stuff. I just feel like I would avoid it.
Have you guys on this coast?
Stop censoring journalists.
Yeah, don't censor. But have you guys had White Castle?
Oh, I grew up on White Castle.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Anna?
I haven't actually, but I'm curious about it.
You haven't felt the slide?
No, I have not felt the slide.
It just slides down your throat.
Oops.
So it's like slimy?
No, it's like good.
No, it's just not Beef.
One other real quick announcement. We are going to do another Super Chat postgame show. So we're hosting a special hour-long Ask TYT Anything Super Chat postgame on Monday, November 11th. So use YouTube Super Chat to ask either me or Cenk any questions that you'd like. Everyone can watch starting at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific. So this will not be behind a paywall. Everyone will be able to watch this, but only the individuals participating on the YouTube Super Chat can ask us the questions. Go to youtube.com/TYT to do just that. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. Last night, Kentucky gubernatorial incumbent Matt Bevin lost to the Democratic Attorney General in the state, Andy Beshear. And this was bad news for Donald Trump because Donald Trump had specifically campaigned on behalf of Matt Bevin. And Bevin still lost. Even though Bevin tried to nationalize this race and make it about Trump, the conservative voters in Kentucky were not buying it. Now, Trump has come out to try to find a way to spin this in his favor. Before we get to his statement though, I want to give you a little taste of his rally for Bevin just this past Monday.
You gotta vote, because if you lose, it sends a really bad message. It just sends a bad, and they will build it up. Here's the story, if you win, they're gonna make it like ho-hum. And if you lose, they're gonna say Trump suffered the greatest defeat in the history of the world. This was the greatest. You can't let that happen to me.
So it seems like he recognizes that Bevin losing signals something about Donald Trump's not only popularity, but influence. Influence is the right word, right? So now he's saying via Twitter, no, it has nothing to do with me, okay? All right, we won big in the state of Kentucky. This is what his tweet said. Won 5 out of 6 elections in Kentucky, including 5 great candidates that I spoke for and introduced last night. Interesting how he doesn't mention any names there. Matt Bevin picked up at least 15 points in the last days, but perhaps not enough. Fake news will blame Trump, right? Look, I don't think anyone's blaming Trump for Bevin losing, but the fact that Bevin's attempt to piggyback off of Trump and nationalize that race, and the fact that it failed says something about Trump's influence.
Oh yeah, I just love that rally just is, it's like his id, just like inside every day, especially that face, that perfectly square orange, like it's just like him like farting on the toilet going, thinking about the impeachment going like, you can't let that happen to me. Well, no, film me while I do this, please, just you can't let that happen to me. That's Trump. That's all we're seeing.
It's all about me,
that was
me,
beautiful.
me, right?
Oh yeah, I will make anything about me. Oh, is your niece having a birthday party? It's about me. Because I'm also having a birthday party. Like
I throw the best birthday parties for nieces. Like he'll find a way.
Yeah.
Now he also tweeted, our big Kentucky rally on Monday night had a massive impact on all the races. The increase in governor's race was at least 15 points and maybe 20. Why doesn't he just like put out more numbers while he's at it? Maybe 50, maybe 50, why not?
Yeah, Bevin was polling at 0% before I came in there, and then he got all the way up to 48. Just make it up.
So let's go to Don Jr. attempting to distance his father from Matt Bevin.
Hey, Don, Bevin was the most unpopular governor in the country, was once down 20 points.
I like Matt Bevin. He's been a friend of mine. He's a good guy, but he's picked a lot of battles. He's, teed off on a lot of people in Kentucky. That's not always popular. We understand how that works. Like I said, I think he's done a good job, but Matt Bevin has picked some fights. So this has nothing to do with Trump. The two really, I don't think, have that much to do with each other.
This has nothing to do with Trump. I mean, Trump came in and attempted to save Bevin, but his influence wasn't significant enough to save him.
He only
That's
said
what the
he had
message
some.
is.
Now this is where the message should go again. So yeah, they won 5 out of those 6 other ones. Trump has nothing to do with Bevin. All of a sudden, even though we just heard him say Trump has everything to do with Bevin on that night, I guess. But any other time, no, not at all. He's been picking too many fights. He's totally unpopular. Again, why was Bevin unpopular? He signed laws to mandate ultrasounds and require health care providers to show patients pictures of fetuses before performing an abortion. Remember when Trump was running for president and he was asked at one of those town halls, what do you think about women that may get an abortion? I think they should be punished. He said, what about the men? Maybe not. Sounds like he matches up with your policies. They passed conservative labor laws, a right to work policy that undercut unions, replaced their prevailing wage, guaranteed public work employees base salaries, cut all that down.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot like the Republican Party agenda altogether.
Yes.
He also successfully pursued a waiver from the Trump administration to add work requirements, premiums, and co-payments to the Medicaid program. Sounds a lot like President Trump and his entire agenda. They're not separate. You can say, hey, he had those bad policies. Trump Jr. goes on TV and says he was unpopular. He was picking fights with teachers. He was stepping up against hard unions. That's what you guys do.
Right. Yeah.
When was the last time the Trump administration came out and said, oh man, these teachers, they really need a pay raise. They haven't got one in 35 years.
Never.
They don't do that. Bevin's policies are the Republican Party's and especially this president's policies.
Yes.
Don't let him separate the two.
Yeah.
He follows the lead. What Republican doesn't follow the lead of Donald Trump?
Such
they
a
all
great
do.
Point. It's such a great point, JR. And there's a disconnect because remember, voters in Kentucky might be in favor of voting Democratic candidates into office on a local level. But again, they have great disdain for Democrats on a national level. So there is a disconnect there because they tend to believe that Donald Trump is looking out for their economic interests, but in reality, he's not. So there needs to be a better strategy on the left to make it abundantly clear that Donald Trump is not looking out for you. He's not even looking out for his base. Donald Trump looks out for himself, for the wealthy, and the swamp that he has infested his administration with.
His entire administration and his candidacy has been a Trojan horse for a dying Republican Party that didn't know how to package their bogus policies anymore. And the last card that they had to play was the race card. It was the racist card, and they decided to play it with Trump. And it's actually not holding up for them as well as they thought it would because exactly, like mask off and guess what? They're against labor unions. Mask off and they're against a woman deciding what to do with her own body. They're against raising the minimum wage and all of the same things. And they're for tax breaks for the wealthy, et cetera. I just think, what happens to the Republican Party? And like, who is going to roll out the red carpet when they decide to try and resuscitate themselves? When the Romneys and the Flakes and whomever else, they come back into the fold. Like, will it be Democrats? And that's what I'm afraid of. And I don't mean that to say like let's further drive a rift in our country. I mean that to say is there needs to be some kind of, atonement is the most ridiculous word that could come out of my mouth right now, but there's gotta be a shift. There's gotta be an understanding that this party, and it's not just with the economic policies, with the impeachment, with the corruption. Who's come out against or for the impeachment from the Republicans? Who said there was actually something wrong with offering or holding up aid to another country until they investigated your political rival? That is wrong. That is wrong. Right. That's a high crime and misdemeanor right there.
And I think the only person I can think of who still identifies as a Republican who came out and said that this is wrong is Romney. Right? Like, Justin Amash does not identify as a Republican anymore. They kicked him out, so he's an independent now.
This is the guy who read the full Mueller report?
He read the Mueller report. He was like, this is, you guys, this is really bad, right? We shouldn't be for this. And they're like, get out of here. We're done with you.
That's not a Republican thing to do.
So look, even though I disagree with Justin Amash on just about everything, he's as conservative can be. Conservatives can be. I give him credit for at least being principled and caring about the rule of law. You hear Republicans claim they care about the rule of law. Donald Trump said he was the law and order candidate when he was running. We all know that is the furthest thing from the truth.
And I guess what I mean is accountability. I'm sorry. And the last thing I'll say is it's not just the amount that the Republicans have hitched their horse to Trump goes far deeper than I think we even know at this point. But we have to remember these two Giuliani goons who were arrested, like Thumbface 1 and Thumbface 2, like they were arrested for funneling campaign money into Republican campaigns, into Republican PACs. Not just Donald Trump PACs, right? But other Republican PACs. And so it's like, everyone's touched the dirty money, like everyone's got it on them. So what? They have nowhere to go but down. There's no way they can get out of this other than doubling down on a corrupt president.
And you gotta keep their feet to the fire, as you were mentioning earlier. So also to be fair to Trump, by law and order president, he meant he's seen every episode.
That was good. That was good. That was really good. All right, we got to move on to the next story, and this is a little bit of a roundup that I think is important to share with you all because it talks about all the little accomplishments that Democrats made last night that might not be getting as much attention. So, Trump's taking the main election day headlines, especially because Virginia has flipped the legislative control from Republicans to Democrats. And then when it comes to Kentucky, the governor's race went from Republican Matt Bevin to Democrat Andy Beshear, even though Bevin still refuses to concede that he lost. Now, there were a bunch of other things that happened during the election yesterday that I want to share with you. And this is really great news. Because of all the gains that were made for Democrats in both Virginia and Kentucky, Medicaid work requirements were defeated at the ballot box last night. That is a headline from the Washington Post, and it's absolutely true. So the Trump administration can only do so much in carrying out its vision for the Medicaid program, which includes requiring able-bodied enrollees to work or volunteer and generally trying to limit further dependence on public benefits by discouraging Medicaid expansion. To accomplish its goals for Medicaid, the Trump administration needs the help of state political leaders, and election results in Kentucky and Virginia yesterday made that less likely as Democrats widen their control in those states.
There's constant proof that it's all connected. Again, exactly what that was saying. You need these guys to head up these states, to control that agenda, to make sure you reject that for the people of each state. We talked about how these states reject what happened with when Obamacare was trying to actually do something, even though it didn't do enough. And they said, let's reject it and make sure that it's a failure, at least in our state, so the people here can be suffering, and then we say that's Obama's fault. When we just rejected what's gonna come in the state to help. Continue to link the two because people don't have the time to analyze it. It seems pretty simple, and let them know.
Yeah, and I think just going off of that, let's just clarify here, and it's something that I didn't really know, but that under Obamacare, Medicaid, which is healthcare for the poorest Americans, was expanded, right? And that means actually that the federal government will pay for 90% of Medicaid expansion costs. So it's not even going back to the state taxpayers anymore, right? And 14 states, Republican states, have not expanded Medicaid.
They rejected that money. It was federal money.
Yes.
So look, the Affordable Care Act did have wonderful components, and that was one of those wonderful components.
Right.
Obama essentially said, in the way that that law was written, hey, you know what? The federal government, with its resources, wants to help state and local governments expand Medicaid, and so we're gonna help fund that to the tune of 90%. And you have these Republican governors from red states, obviously, give the federal government the middle finger and say, no, we're gonna allow people in our state to go without health care.
Right.
Right? People die under that type of thinking. And it's disgusting that they did that. So finally, there is some retaliation.
And there has been in 2018 also in the midterms, you saw in a couple of states, red states, there were ballot initiatives and ballot measures where they put it to the people and the people were like, yes. Medicaid expansion.
Exactly.
He just got to complaining about Matt Bevin being a pain because he kept asking for money for things in the state. You didn't take that money that was coming to your state though.
Things that are part of law already.
So in Kansas City, Missouri, it's bad news, but it's a type of story that really gives you an idea of where people's head is at a time when there are much more, I guess, serious issues to be concerned about. Like when you see this type of stuff and you see how racism just trumps rationale or logic, it's unbelievable. So a historic 10-mile road in Kansas City, Missouri will no longer be known as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard after having nearly 100 signs erected with his name stand for only 9 months. So previously the name of that boulevard was Paseo. And so there was this movement called Save the Paseo, and they actually staged a silent protest at a black church. Anyway, they voted on this, and it turns out that they are now going to switch it back to Paseo.
So again, every time Martin Luther King Jr. Day comes around and Republicans start talking about how he would have been a Republican, and then also talk about how, oh yeah, you Democrats, the Democrat Party did historically, all that they keep talking about. We're talking about the current state of our political nature and who is elected in office and the types of people that they represent. These are the type of people they represent. If Martin Luther King was around, they would hate him. hate everything he ever stood for. These are the same people. They're stripping his name on a 10-mile stretch. You know, if you're driving 10 miles on a freeway stretch and you're worried about traffic or which lane you're gonna get into, whether or not that guy's gonna cut you off, you don't look, it says this stretch is dedicated to Officer McNeely. I don't care.
Right.
That's not what I'm thinking about right now. I'm definitely not thinking about it when I'm trying to vote in something to change my life for the better when we're in a lot of perilous situations in the country. But that's what they're concerned about. And guess who pays attention to that? Racists like the head of the Republican Party right now. And they go, man, we got enough people to want to reject Martin Luther King on a 10-mile road stretch on a name. I think we can work with this. Stephen Miller says, I can work with this.
Absolutely.
We got racists we can appeal to.
It's also just funny because do they know that paseo is Spanish?
Oh, man.
You're taking away a name because it honors Black Americans and a civil rights hero. But paseo, I mean, that's an open door for immigrants right there. So keep it paseo, vamos.
The caravan.
¿Cómo se llama el pueblo?
The caravan definitely moved along paseo.
Yeah.
That caravan that hasn't.
Exactly. The caravan that doesn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, well, let's go back to some of the good news that happened yesterday. Mike Pence actually suffered a little bit of an embarrassment of his own. So for the first time in nearly 40 years, Democrats have taken control of Columbus, Indiana. That's actually his hometown. And so again, you're seeing these elections that are flipping from red to blue all over the place, including in areas where people like Mike Pence grew up. Also, two other great wins. I don't know if you guys remember this story, but there was a woman named Julie Briskman. She was a woman who flipped off Donald Trump's motorcade shortly after he was inaugurated. There's one of the headlines that CNN put out there. And so we're not gonna show you the photo, but she got fired from her government job as a result of that photo going viral. And she decided to run and for a local race, and she won. So she is now a district supervisor in Virginia, okay? So she says healthcare doesn't pass, but you try to dismantle it from the inside. 500 people get shot in Las Vegas, you're doing nothing about it. You know, white supremacists have this big march and hurt a bunch of people down in Charlottesville, and you call them good people. So she's noting all of the issues on the right. And these are the types of issues that encourage people to go to the polls and retaliate.
Honest politicians would pay attention to the fact that she ran on those types of things. But I haven't heard it yet because I haven't listened very closely. But what people's reactions are to her winning, but they'd say, this is the woman who flipped off the president. And that's why she won, because there's this much hate and division in the country. No, she had an agenda she's running on that actually paid attention to the American people. You can try and blow it off all you want because of that one instance. She was fired for that is actually the story behind that. Not that's what she was elected for. She was elected for other reasons outside of that.
And then I want to end on what happened in Lewiston, Maine. They actually hired a Somali immigrant, which is great news. And she had been targeted by online trolls. So her name is Safia Khalid. She's a Somali immigrant who ran for city council in Lewiston, Maine. And online trolls from as far away as Alabama and Mississippi, unsurprising, were hurling vile abuse at her, telling her that Muslims had no place in American government and she should go back to where she came from. Well, she wasn't buying it. She ran, she won. And this is really great news. I saw Representative Ilhan Omar tweet support toward her, which was wonderful to see as well. Look, this is really great to see because there's been so much fear mongering toward the powerless, the disenfranchised, people of color, and to see voters get energized to come out and defend these very groups of people is important. And it's also, let's keep it real, it's important to have representation in local government, in Congress. There's so many Muslims in the country, Muslim women in the country who haven't received much representation at all. So to see an increasing number of lawmakers get elected with that background is good to see.
Yeah, and at a time when it's easy to, I think a lot of immigrants around the country and a lot of religious minorities are feeling, like, well, maybe we should just maybe this country isn't for us. Maybe we should hide. You know, maybe we should make ourselves small. I think that elected representatives like this woman show that no, make yourselves big, make yourselves known, represent as broad and as narrow a swath of people as you want, and that actually just your policies are what matter.
Exactly, and don't let the trolls intimidate you. That's exactly what they want, and it just makes me really proud to see women fight back like this. All right, we're gonna take our break, but when we come back, we are gonna discuss how Lindsey Graham not only moved the goalposts when it comes to evidence for Donald Trump's impeachment, he has gotten rid of the goalposts altogether. He doesn't even want to see evidence pertaining to this investigation. We'll give you the details when we return.
We're gonna do a little thing we like to call Weekly World News. Weekly World News. I cull stories from around the globe, stories that aren't covered on the main show or aren't covered enough, and I turn it into a 5-question quiz for Dave and Steve. All right, do we have our answers? A from Dave and C from Steve, and the correct answer is B, an oil tanker that sank off the coast of China. Okay, we have one answer of B and one answer of C. What is the correct answer? It is, of course, A, an airplane wing walking stunt gone wrong. Okay, we have an answer of A from Dave and C from Steve. The correct answer is B. We have an answer of B and C. What is the correct answer in true Weekly World News tradition? It's A.
Come on.
Taking the bear out for ice cream.
That can't possibly be true. We're terrible today. Just terrible.
I often think about the terror that my grandmother was under till she was 8 or 9 years old, and how horrific that experience must have been in this state of discomfort for the benefit of other people.
People will still treat you like you're the problem. That's what we mean when we say living well black. We're just trying to live our best life. We're trying to be the best that we can be, and we're frustrated and tired of people treating us like we're criminals.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Jank. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
You can't let that happen to me.
TYT, Anna, Francesca, and JR with you. A few member comments before we move on. J-Bone writes in, this is again from our member comments. Hear me now, quote me later. The Kentucky General Assembly will vote to remove powers from the governor before Beshear is sworn in, just like they did in North Carolina. I'm really glad you mentioned that. I think, JR, you mentioned that as well during our production meeting, how they like to strip all the power from a Democratic governor, incoming governor.
Happened in North Carolina, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Marijuana's #3 fan. Why is it Repubs always make beards look horrible? Trump Jr. looks horrible in a beard. Yeah, that is interesting.
That in comedy.
So, yes. But so that means Ted Cruz.
Oh, Ted Cruz's beard is, I feel assaulted by it every time I see it.
I mean, I just feel like anything that covers his face a little bit more.
But that's the
You would think it'd be good to cover his face.
You would think it'd be good. Everyone's
Somehow
trying to get their
makes him look
Gorka on,
creepier.
but no one can do it.
You need the accent to go with it.
All right, in a few TYT lives, I bathe in Tomi Lahren's tears. That election was all about Trump. That's why Democrats actually won. I totally agree with you. Eclectic Miscellanea says, Francesca is right. Where are all the people of good conscience in the GOP fighting against Trump's racism and corruption? Either what's left of the Republican Party are cowards, racist, corrupt, or all three. Yeah, 100%. They care about their political careers way more than they care about anything else, including their so-called values and principles. Yeah. I mean, they're so afraid of Donald Trump coming after them on Twitter, and that means that their re-election is in jeopardy, right? Yep. That's all they care about. Look, the only reason why Romney is okay with timidly criticizing Donald Trump is because he doesn't have to worry about re-election for like 5-6 years.
Right.
He's like, maybe he's hoping he'll be gone by then. Can I mention one thing? Brenda, also, Heart of Life 77. She did mention the Paseo thing with MLK street name. Said the Paseo change was done just randomly by the city council, not by votes of the people. So if that's the case, I apologize to her. Implicating the people of Kansas. It was a Kansas City area?
Kansas City, Missouri, yeah.
Yeah, it was the city council area. I mean, I'm going off of this tweet. We can maybe look into it more, but.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll look into it.
Racists.
All right. Either way, like the fact that that's
the fact that someone was doing it just wasn't the voters. It was the city council.
Yeah. Racist. Well, let's move on to impeachment-related news. Senator Lindsey Graham, although very critical of Donald Trump during the election in 2015, has decided to be a Donald Trump sycophant. And nothing makes that clearer than his defense of Donald Trump in this impeachment investigation. Now, if you can recall earlier, Lindsey Graham made some declarations about how this impeachment investigation has no evidence, which is why he's supportive of Donald Trump. In fact, let's give you a little taste of what he had previously said.
If you're looking for a circumstance where the President of the United States was threatening the Ukraine with cutting off aid unless they investigated his political opponent, you would be very disappointed. That does not exist.
Well, it turns out that evidence does in fact exist. It exists in the form of actual testimony given by actual Trump administration officials. People like Bill Taylor, who was the US ambassador, people like Gordon Sondland, the EU ambassador, people like Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who said that there absolutely was quid pro quo. I mean, the list goes on and on. You have more and more Trump administration officials, both current and former Trump administration officials, testifying before these House committees to say this was wrong, yes, there was quid pro quo, right? Now, what does Lindsey Graham have to say about this overwhelming evidence? Well, Lindsey Graham, the Republican chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, doesn't plan on reading the transcripts of testimony from former special envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, or EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland, declaring the entire deposition and impeachment process BS. Graham dismissed Sondland's apparent reversal, in which he now admits he thought Ukraine aid was tied to Ukraine making a public anti-corruption statement. And I want to, by the way, clarify that for a second. It's not just that Ukraine needed to make a public anti-corruption statement. Ukraine had to publicly announce that they were launching an investigation into the Bidens. okay? Donald Trump's political opponent. So I didn't like the wording there that CBS used. Be very specific about what the Trump administration demanded here. Now, in regard to that, Graham suggested he doesn't care what any bureaucrat like Sondland thinks. By the way, Sondland, not a bureaucrat. In fact, he was a huge Trump supporter and donated $1 million to Donald Trump's inaugural fund. So to say that he's just some lame bureaucrat or some partisan who's out to get Trump is absolutely ridiculous. He spent $1 million stupidly of his own money to support a criminal, and now he's wrapped up in this impeachment investigation.
And he looks like the dodo bird from Runaway Bird, with Sesame Street, like that. Anyway, look
I
at
feel
that.
bad for that poor dodo
like
bird.
The aging. Oh no, he was mean. It was the mean dodo bird. You guys tweet me, no pun intended. Also Marie Yovanovitch, let's not,
Yes.
which my favorite thing about, this is the week where we're seeing the transcripts, right? They're being released, and then the actual public testimony is gonna happen next week in terms of these same people, which, mind you, none of these people are the whistleblower. Like, this is what I love about these testimonies. Like, they're not the whistleblower and they're saying all the same things the whistleblower said. So, wow, you just gotta go to bat against all of these career officials who I have to say, at this point, I'm like, you know what? Good for you, like, thank you. There's they couldn't scoop the State Department out and just completely empty it out. I know there's nothing but bramble in there at this point, but there's something like 20% haven't been hired up still in the State Department, but still there were some officials and they pay attention.
Yeah.
And they know a crime and they know when something's crossed the line when they see it. My favorite part though is Yovanovitch says that Sondland, the EU ambassador, told her, because she was like, I think that I'm being set up. Essentially, they're trying to remove me from my job because
I won't play ball.
Because I won't play ball, and I'm sort of raising concerns about this strategy to strong arm Ukraine. And Sondland was like, I don't know. Tweet something about Trump.
No, tweet something
tweet
applauding
something positive.
or praising. Praising was the word. Praise Trump on Twitter
so
you can secure your job.
You're
How
golden.
pathetic is that?
You're golden.
So pathetic.
So when you bring up things like, Lindsey Graham brought up those, I don't believe bureaucrats like that, because Sondland's the only bureaucrat that's in Washington.
Absolutely.
He doesn't believe bureaucrats like that, meaning ones that don't help out his agenda or his lies. So I mean, bureaucrats like Barr. Bureaucrats like Mike Pompeo.
They're doing great.
Those bureaucrats are totally on the up and up. They're not bureaucrats apparently. And also, so you go with those hot words. But remember the T-shirts behind Trump in was it in Kentucky?
Read
the transcripts. Hey, let's send Lindsey Graham a whole bunch of those T-shirts. Read the transcripts. Read the transcripts because until you want to find out what really happened.
I don't do words. I tried them. I don't like them. It's like cottage cheese to me.
He is such a spineless,
I don't like that. Don't like laws.
Corrupt, terrible politician.
His face,
That's who he is.
His face reminded me a lot. Those close-ups, I wasn't prepared for them. Just like silly putty. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go superficial on him, but it's just.
Well, let's go from one giant Republican disappointment to the next. Senator Rand Paul has decided to make a big deal about the identity of the whistleblower. This is the individual who filed a formal complaint in regard to Donald Trump's phone conversation with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Now, in that phone conversation, it was clear that Trump wanted Zelensky to dig up dirt on his political rival, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter Biden. Now, Rand Paul has started regurgitating what Trump has said. Trump wants to retaliate against this whistleblower. The whistleblower at this point is irrelevant because now you have more and more evidence, including Trump administration officials coming out and testifying that what Donald Trump did was wrong and that there was quid pro quo involved. So they have corroborated what the whistleblower has said in his formal complaint. And the federal government is supposed to protect his identity if he or she wishes to remain anonymous. But you have Rand Paul running around town arguing that I know the identity, and you know what? I might reveal it. I might reveal the identity of this whistleblower because I'm trying to cozy up to Trump because I want to make sure that Republican voters reelect me in the future, right? So, asked why he hasn't disclosed the name of the official individual, Paul told reporters that he probably will. Then he said, I'm more than willing to, and I probably will at some point. There is no law preventing anybody from saying the same. He actually doubled down on these types of statements in his appearance on Bret Baier's show on Fox. Take a look.
But you don't think this is dangerous to actually out the whistleblower? I mean, the president has said that he's treasonous and a traitor.
I think that the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution is very clear, and I think that what we should have.
All right, so let's go to E2, please.
What about this concern that protecting whistleblowers overall, if you name this person, suddenly jeopardizes other things? Let's go back to 2014, Campaign for Liberty, founded by your dad. You say this: we've got so many millions of government contractors that when they see something wrong, they should be able to report it without repercussions. Your dad, Ron Paul, says, I think we should praise our whistleblowers. Ron Paul said to Applause, adding people like Edward Snowden should be rewarded.
Absolutely.
So if those statements are true, why are you doing what you're doing now?
I agree completely with it, but we were defending Edward Snowden, who I still defend, and I think he should have gotten whistleblower status. Most of the people defending the current whistleblower wanted to lock up Edward Snowden and hang him or execute him. So yes, the whistleblower statute should protect people.
Only the whistleblowers that you like?
No, they should protect him. I want Edward Snowden protected so he's not executed. I want him protected.
What about this guy?
I don't want him executed either. I don't think he should be fired, but I agree with what Lindsey Graham said in your lead in, and that is that it's a protection from being fired. It's not a protection to be anonymous, particularly if it's going to be a criminal case. Once you have a crime, there is a constitutional protection that you have to confront your accuser.
So there are different standards depending on which whistleblower he likes, right? So there are certain whistleblowers that deserve protections as long as they go along with something I believe. But when it comes to, let's keep it real, it's not even about liking a whistleblower or disliking a whistleblower. It's about Rand Paul's political career. Right. It's about appealing to Trump's base. That's all this is about. If Trump's base was in favor of protecting this whistleblower's identity, then he would fight to protect the whistleblower's identity. Again, the whole purpose of revealing this individual's name is so people can attack him or her, right? I don't know who this person is, and I have no interest in reading any of the disgusting right-wing media that's putting names out there.
When Bret Baier catches you in a lie and points out your hypocrisy, I mean, pack it in.
I know,
it's like
right?
The walking date rape drug just called me a hypocrite. Bret Baier looks like a walking date rape drug. That's what I just said, and I stand by it. The point is that Fox, even Fox News, I think they're like, all right, how much disbelief am I going to enter into here? In order to continue allowing Republicans to just say whatever they feel like. I don't know where this ends. Where does this go?
You keep moving the lie. All you do is continue to move the lie. So he brought up this, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. We're still in an impeachment inquiry, am I right?
Yeah.
It's not a criminal investigation. It's not a criminal trial.
It's a political process.
Is Donald Trump up? Does he have, are they about to sentence him if they convict him of these crimes? No. The Sixth Amendment says, the very first phrase, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial, and on and on and on, and also a counsel, and also gets to face his accuser. That's what Rand Paul keeps referring to. The Sixth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment, the Constitution requires you to face your accusers. In a criminal prosecution, it's not what this is.
Right.
This is to investigate his lawlessness so we can see if we're going to put him up and then impeach him. And even if you impeach him, he's not even necessarily going to go out of, be taken out of office yet.
Right.
So, to keep shifting the reality of the situation, when he spoke to a reporter, I forget which network she was from, he goes, you have to get your facts straight. You have to get your facts straight. You see, I can do all this because the Sixth Amendment doesn't matter if we're endangering the life of this whistleblower. The Sixth Amendment, these are two different things. So you want to go with the law, at least read it first before you start lambasting other people for not reading it.
Yeah, and I think Baier, apologies for what I said about you, but he does have a point, which is that, and I think for people on the left and the right, and it doesn't really matter what your party is, but having a double standard around whistleblowers is not okay, right? And we should be protecting whistleblowers. But I mean, for example, the Republican Party, when Assange released, video of Blackwater, right? Killing civilians, okay, Assange is a pariah, we hate him. And then when Assange releases stuff around Hillary Clinton, Trump talks about him at every rally. I love Assange. Julian, WikiLeaks.
I know.
Wiki. Like, so you can't just bend whatever. I mean, listen, I think Assange has gone off the deep end a little bit. I also think that he, should not be necessarily, I don't know if he should be extradited, etc. But you can't have it both ways, right?
Yeah,
whistleblowers should be protected.
You can't change where you stand on various issues based on whether it helps your political agenda. And you see that happening certainly on the right. And one thing that I wanted to just quickly mention, look, who knows what other questionable things Donald Trump has done while in office. I think this is also his way of intimidating future whistleblowers from coming forward. This is a form of intimidation. This is what he's doing. That's all it is. Because he knows that the evidence is out there. I mean, he knows that there are people testifying against him right now. I mean, he's putting out this argument that, he wants to be able to confront his accuser, right? That's what he wants to do. There are accusers right now. You know them by name. How come you don't want to confront them? It's because it's not about defending yourself. It's not about confronting them. It's about preventing other whistleblowers from coming forward, because I have no doubt in my mind there were other things going on in that administration that were questionable.
And to ignore the lawlessness that's happening. Instead, again, we talked about before, it's not about the content, it's about the process they're gonna attack. This whistleblower is anonymous. The whistleblower is anonymous. Hey, I tweeted earlier, I can name several whistleblowers: Gordon Sondland, Bill Taylor, Alex Vindman, Mick Mulvaney, Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. They've all outed you because you all said, hey, this was a quid pro quo. We do this. That's what Mick Mulvaney said.
We do this all the time.
We do it all the time.
I mean, there is no depth to the syphilitic dream and nightmare that we're in. It's everyone just living inside of Trump's brain or outside of it. That's all there is. Do you live inside his brain or do you live outside of his brain? I think every Republican needs to answer that question.
All right, well, Francesca Fiorentini,
thank you for
joining us. This was
Anytime.
great. And J.R. Jackson.
Thank you.
Check him out on social media. It was a pleasure.
Tweets.
We will be back with a whole new panel. Trump has already launched Trump TV. In fact, they recently did a weather report. So why don't we go to the Trump Weather Channel and see what they have to say about this story.
Brett Ehrlich reporting live on Hurricane Dorian as the storm bears down here in Mobile, Alabama. And as you can see, the weather is actually pretty nice. We need to fix this shot. We need to make it seem like there's more of a hurricane. Okay, actually, let's go to some video of a hurricane. Oh God, that's what a hurricane would look like if one was here. And that's scary, isn't it? And actually, if you listen really close, you can hear the wind, real natural debris. And I'm not even sure how the people here in Mobile will cope with the cleanup afterwards. So we're just really waiting we gotta get out of the shot. We gotta get out of the shot with bated breath to see what will happen. And ow, okay, all right, okay, that's back to you guys, back to you in the studio. All right. Mr. President, I can't fake rain. What do you mean use a Sharpie? As you can see, the rain is coming down in buckets. The rain's coming down all over the place, and there is no quarter. There is no quarter, no place to hide. I quit. I just quit.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Damage Report, another week of the news. I am John Idarola, and we've got a doozy of a show for you. My God, is DC up its own ass today. We have put someone into power in our country who is so crazy, they have finally out-crazied North Korea.
The US is the only country in the world that isn't part of the Paris Climate Accord.
Yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what he told us. He pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear accords.
People call the police on black people. People are fearful of black humans. There is no more to the story than racism.
was gonna say we've been dealing with the issue of lead poisoning in this country, but that would imply that we're really doing something. We have an issue with lead poisoning and it continues. So 60 people are now dead. Some of them grandmothers, many of them children. The silence of politicians on both sides of the aisle. Just about only Bernie Sanders, maybe Tulsi Gabbard, and a few others have actually been critical of what happened there. And the rest are cowards hiding behind silence, refusing to admit what happened yesterday.
We have to be able to accept that we do things wrong in this country. You can fix and change things, make things even.
What's great about our country, and this is a great example of it, is everybody's pissed off. This is the Damage Report, and it's all about the threats facing us each day. When something's relevant, and it's hot, and it's in the news, you're not supposed to talk about it. Can we start talking about it now? Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Can't let that happen to me. You can't let that happen to me.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Whole new power panel. Yeah, I'm calling it a power panel. That's what happens when Jake is gone. Not to say that he's not part of power panels, but that didn't come out right. Anyway, Dan Evans joins in.
Hello.
Check out his podcast, Audio Face.
Yes.
He talks about music, politics. It's excellent.
We're gonna be talking about music later on, right? Maybe.
Yes, we might. Yeah, if we get to it. And John Idarola, host of Damage Report, The Damage Report.
And I refuse to talk about music. So there you go.
I've
Which
tried.
Is probably for the best, considering.
Do you want to get into some
No,
of the
I don't.
songs you've sung around the office?
Like.
I'm not gonna get into it.
Okay.
I implied it as a threat. I don't want to make good enough. Maybe later.
All right, I want to read a few member comments before we move on. So we have quid pro quo, giant Republican disappointment. Well, that's kind of redundant. You're right. You're right. I'm an angry gumball says, so Graham wants to be like an ostrich and bury his head in the sand. The only problem is that he has no neck.
That's
salty.
spicy.
I like it. I love salt. All right, so let's move on. We have a really disturbing video to show you. CNN's New Day likes to do these focus groups, and oftentimes they'll have Trump voters on to kind of discuss where they're at when it comes to Trump as a candidate. Are they happy? Are they disappointed? Well, this latest panel was with Pennsylvania's swing district voters, and there was one portion that included Allison Camerata, the CNN host, asking a Trump voter what it would take for her to turn her back on Trump. I'm gonna warn you, this is a disturbing answer. Take a look.
Crystal, is there anything that he could do or anything that could happen that would make you not vote for him? No. If he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, would you vote for him?
You'd have to know why he shot.
Yeah, why did he shoot him?
Oh my God.
So this is the shooting someone on Fifth Avenue is a statement that Trump made. I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, they'd still support me. And he's right. I mean, I guess he really does understand like the pulse of his base. They just don't value human lives. It's amazing.
Like he's just trained his entire base, unfortunately, to accept his alternate reality, and he's been grooming them since he started his campaign in 2015. And so now this is just the fruits of what happens when you convince all your fans to just only accept your version of reality. And it's kind of shocking now.
What happened to Republicans who claimed that they were concerned about big government? Because I would argue that having a president who is defended regardless of what he does is enabling big government, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's scary. I think you could attack it from a number of different angles. I think generally I look at this sort of story and I think, well, this is scary. This is a scary prospect for democracy to have so many people not just like finding themselves in a cult of personality, but like gleefully identifying in that way. I mean, it would be one thing if it turned out that there was nothing that could shake your confidence in a politician, but to say it on TV And I'd only previously, I'd read the statement, I hadn't actually watched it. The smug satisfaction on the faces of those people saying it, that's horrifying. I mean, when I think of the two politicians I support the most right now, Bernie Sanders and AOC, I could think of hundreds of things that they could do that would cause me to cast them. If Bernie came out and said, you know what, I've been thinking about it, climate change is not real, I'd be like, it's been good, it's been real, see you next time.
Totally,
I'm not gonna support him.
Yeah, I think that
It took 2 seconds to come up with something.
There's a clear difference between Trump's base and almost all other voters, right? Because especially progressive voters, I mean, when you really think about it, progressives do hold their candidates to a very, very high standard. I think sometimes it goes a little too far, but we're able to determine whether someone is good for the country policy-wise, and we're not. Of course, there's a little bit of cult of personality on the left as well, but that's not what drives the votes. You know, so it's just it's terrifying, but it also really does speak to a point that I hope we've been making consistently on this show. Democrats need to stop thinking that they can persuade Trump voters to turn on him. They're not going to turn on him. So like this idea of running as a moderate, you know, maybe if I run as a moderate, these Trump voters might flip. They're not going to flip.
Well, many won't anyway. I mean, there's that.
The vast majority won't.
I would say something like a quarter of the country will never.
Republicans.
Yeah, the idea that look, I think that there are some hypothetically who might not show up or something, but the idea that all it'll take would be Tim Ryan on the ballot or something, and that would swing him. That's crazy. When I watch that woman talking that way, I think one of the really interesting cultural divides right now that I don't think we pay enough attention to is what constitutes strength. Like people love to say things and think that what they're projecting is strength. And I see it as an outsider and think, well, you're crazy. Like we're gonna talk about the TI thing.
Oh my
so
God.
that anecdote, we're not going in depth into it, but he said that because he thinks I'm an awesome guy because of this. And I see it and I think, no, you're crazy. If you say there is literally nothing that my leader could do that would cause me to question him, I see that as, oh, so you are effectively admitting that you're a zombie, that you don't move through your day with any critical thought. And it seems almost inevitable in hindsight that the conservative worldview, and especially American conservatism, is incredibly hierarchical. Everything can be assembled into a hierarchy where the young are lower than the old, women are lower than men, everyone who's not white is lower than those who are white, everyone who's not Christian is lower than Christians, and everyone at the end of the day is lower than the God King. Yeah. And they finally found him. They thought they liked Reagan, but I don't think that people were this crazy about Reagan, even in his heyday.
Me neither. Yeah, I think the point you're getting at, whereas we're accepting executive propaganda and we're making it fashionable, like they would respond and say, oh, well, you're just being hypnotized by the fake news media. We're paying attention to our guy, the well-known journalist Donald Trump, who is telling us what we're supposed to believe. And we shouldn't be glamorizing this. This is a factor that we should be worried about and we should think about politically. But I think you're right, Anna, that ultimately we shouldn't try to win over these people. This is Trump's unbreakable base. This is kind of like Cenk says sometimes, this is like built in like fascist part of the country that will just support him no matter what.
Yeah.
It is terrifying. All right, well, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to read some of your member comments in TYT Live. So make sure you tweet to us using the hashtag TYT Live. And our next story is a little bit of a doozy. Tulsi Gabbard went on The View and there was some sparring. Come right back.
Impeachment is a winner. We need to fire up the progressive Democratic Party base. The way you do that is by putting the president effectively on trial, airing his crimes, making them the focus of the news cycle. As an immigrant to the United States, who's had the privilege of studying and teaching law at Stanford Law School, I take very seriously our founding commitments. My family didn't migrate across the world twice to be free, only so that I could watch liberty die on my watch. I'm challenging Nancy Pelosi for her seat in the House. We need real resistance. And a Democratic Speaker of the House who funds the kleptocrats' concentration camps, that's not resistance. And that's not even opposition, that is enablement and appeasement. And centrists think moderation wins because it moves to the middle and meets people where they're at. Progressives understand that a bold vision wins elections, because that's what motivates people to hit the street and pound the pavement necessary to win elections.
They did 100 squats a day for 30 days straight. I was like, how hard can that be? That doesn't sound very hard. So I'm gonna try to do this for 30 days and see if there's any difference in my physique.
3 weeks later.
Steve, how is your exercise regimen coming along with your squats?
No, I did 100, 100, 100, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0.
You're pacing yourself.
Yeah.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell an herbicide called Roundup. You should know that recent studies have linked this commercial herbicide to a significant increase in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A diagnosis of this type of cancer can be devastating to you and your family, while Monsanto continues to profit from these sales. If you or a loved one were exposed to Roundup at work or at home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you might be entitled to financial compensation, and you have a right to take action now.
From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Yes, President Donald Trump has made life hell.
Everything is always about race, because the sitting president, known for his trigger Twitter fingers, somehow kept it tight-lipped over the Nazis who returned to Charlottesville last week.
If Republican politicians genuinely cared about all lives, we wouldn't be facing the largest wealth redistribution in American history.
Trump, who claims he wants to make America great again, but isn't really interested in protecting the little guy, just withdrew Obama's memo and told collectors that they're free to go back to screwing over struggling Americans with fees.
This decision will impact far and wide, especially, and listen for the irony here, those who already pay more out of pocket each year due to soaring internet package prices.
There's a ton of racist monuments in America. White supremacy is still put up on a pedestal.
Of course, more white people are killed by police. White people make up more than 75% of the US population.
So you can justify your bigotry and feel better about saying these things at dinner, polite dinner conversation with a side of racism and home fries.
Does the president normally watch these kind of anti-Muslim videos that have been posted by this group?
Here's a list of what the president watches every day. It goes cartoons, Fox and Friends cartoons, followed by, at noon, it was a bunch of Civil War documentaries for like 6 hours. But he claps at all the wrong times.
TYT, Dan Evans and John Idarola join me for hour 2. The show will go on as usual today. This hour will be followed with the conversation, and then we'll do the post game after that. A few TYT lives via Twitter. The Mathematician says Republican voters are closet Nazis and have been for decades. Trump has just emboldened them to drop the masks and scams and just say in public what they used to say in their living rooms with. I'm sure they always used to say this kind of stuff in their living rooms.
I'm sure they still say it in their living rooms now.
Definitely. Living rooms with fellow Fox News watchers, and they knew they'd have to lie anywhere else. Lil Sebastian says, the only thing that brings joy to my life is that Trump's base, I should have read this ahead of time.
Is this impending doom sort of thing?
Trump's base is, they're older individuals.
Right, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Little Sebastian, you have a delightful Twitter handle.
Yeah, and so they've accrued a great deal of wisdom through the years.
Antonio Jordan says, I had to watch 2 episodes a day to catch up for a couple of weeks, but now I can finally watch.
Main show? I encourage binging the news like that. That's definitely healthy. No, thank you for listening.
No, not healthy.
But I would also say that this isn't like Westworld. Like if you skip a few, you'll be okay.
Yeah, definitely.
You can watch the new stuff.
Definitely, yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the rest of the news today. Tulsi Gabbard co-hosted The View, and things got spicy between Gabbard and some of the ladies on the show, especially when it came to some of the rumors that have been flying around in regard to Tulsi Gabbard and her relationship with Russia. So let's take a look at what she's upset about.
I want to start with something that I think is also important about facts, because recently on your show here,
I was just going to get to that.
Good. Helping you out.
You want me to ask you the question?
No, look, some of you have accused me of being a traitor to my country, a Russian asset, a Trojan horse, or a useful idiot, I think was the term that you used. Which basically means that I'm naive or lack intelligence to know what's going on.
They use that.
I want to let your viewers know exactly who I am.
All right.
Set the record straight. I am a patriot. I love our country. I am a strong and intelligent woman of color, and I have dedicated almost my entire adult life to protecting the safety, security, and the freedom of all Americans in this country.
So what she was referring to there were previous statements that were made by a few of the women on The View. So for instance, when the show discussed Gabbard and Clinton's comments about her recently, Sunny Hostin said, quote, "I've often said that Tulsi is sort of a Trojan horse in this. She's polling at only 1.2%, yet she's still in the race." And then
really fast on that. I don't. What does she mean by Trojan horse in that?
I don't know. I really don't know. But look,
like there are multiple people who are only at 1%.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say like 5 people are at like 1%.
Tim Ryan, Trojan horse.
Well, he's not technically running anymore, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of other Tim Ryans effectively. I was recently reminded by an MSNBC graphic, me and Michael Bennett were reminded that Michael Bennett's still technically running.
Oh my God, I just
He's
got
still
reminded.
in this.
That's kind of incredible. No, so look, this is the thing with Tulsi Gabbard, right? And I want to note right now, because I never get credit for it, I am fair in my critiques. I do not like Tulsi Gabbard as a candidate at all. I think that she's a target-rich environment when it comes to critiquing her, especially when it comes to her BDS vote. If she is a patriot who fought for this country, that means that she fought for this Constitution. That means fighting for the First Amendment. If you vote on a resolution to condemn people in America practicing their First Amendment rights because you don't like the fact that they're holding the Israeli government to account, that's an issue for me, right? And we were critical of Ro Khanna for also casting that vote, that anti-BDS vote. I think she's a target-rich environment when it comes to things like flip-flopping on Medicare for all. She claimed to be this true progressive who was supportive of Medicare for all. Later, she says she's in favor of Medicare choice. So there's a bunch of policy-related issues that you can critique her on, but instead the lazy attacks where she's accused of being a Russian asset, or it's lame and it's lazy, and I have to defend Tulsi Gabbard on that. Unless you have evidence proving that she's a Russian asset, you don't get to just smear someone and call her a Russian asset. Okay, so I think that's a problem. Now let's also note that Joy Behar had previously referred to her as a useful idiot, which is why Tulsi Gabbard referenced that in the video that we just showed you. Now, Joy Behar fires back in this next clip.
Franklin Graham finds you refreshing. He doesn't find me refreshing. Richard Spencer, the white nationalist leader, says he could vote for you.
Joy, this is why.
I mean, you're on Tucker Carlson at least 10 times. Why don't you go on Chris Wallace's show?
This is why I'm here, because you and other people continue to spread these innuendos that have nothing to do with who I am.
Well, Hillary Clinton started it, and then you shot back at her, boy. You called her the queen of warmongers.
You doubled down. Unfortunately, you doubled down on the baseless accusations that she made. It's offensive to me as a soldier, as an American, as a member of Congress, as a veteran, and frankly, as a woman, to be so demeaned in such a way.
But you called her the personification of rock.
So demeaned
She's a woman
in such a way.
Oh my God.
So, look, I don't think Behar's defense was that great. It wasn't great at all, actually.
Well, and it's also weird because so the thing started with Hillary's original comment, which was slightly misreported. So apparently Joy Behar jumped on it. And even once it was corrected and she realized that Hillary Clinton hadn't literally said Russia, she was like implying the GOP or something, Joy's just sticking with the original misinterpretation? She was so excited by it or something?
Hold on, I am as well. Like the original interpretation of what Hillary Clinton said. She specifically said in the end of her statement that Jill Stein is also a Russian agent. So like her camp's attempt to backpedal and clean up the mess that Hillary Clinton put out there, I thought was incredibly lame, and I'm not buying it.
That's fine, because I don't care what Hillary says on literally anything. And I wish that all of us as a country would move on from her. The frustrating thing about that clip is we talked about Jane Fonda's interaction with Abby Huntsman earlier today on the Damage Report, and that's a very similar sort of thing. It's a pointless thing, whether you think it or not, it's a pointless thing to continually focus on. And The View, in some ways, they're good people and they're doing their best, but it's always lazy. It's always kind of lazy, and like they were spreading misinformation about the Green New Deal earlier. And I get why, especially if you're on the show, she will have to defend herself, obviously, and I would be incredibly frustrated being called a useful idiot or whatever. I do think, though, outside of the context of being on the show, strategically for her candidacy, I don't know why Tulsi Gabbard is focusing so much on this. To me, it would be like if Richard Nixon just kept.
It helped her in her numbers.
But that's to some extent. I think the fact that she was being attacked by a high-profile politician certainly helped her. That doesn't mean that the content necessarily helped her. In general, if you want to expand your base to include new people, this hardly seems like the sort of thing that's going to expand it, focusing on it. Now, her supporters are really defensive of her, obviously, and they think that what Hillary Clinton said is fundamentally false. So focusing on it for them, they really support you, they get fired up. But that doesn't shoot you up to 5 or 10% or 20%, let alone to first place. So I think like she could look at whether you think that Elizabeth Warren is a real progressive or fake progressive, she didn't get to like neck and neck with Joe Biden by focusing on this sort of thing, like focusing exclusively on how she's being attacked. She put forward actual proposals. I think that if Tulsi Gabbard were to like tour the nation talking about climate change or something like that, it would be much better for her. As defensive as I would be too, I would be. If I was being attacked constantly by Hillary Clinton and on The View, I'd be mad about it too. But if you want to do better pragmatically, how could this possibly be the way to do it?
I totally agree with you. She doesn't focus on policy nearly enough. And even in the debates, I get it. You have branded yourself as the anti-regime change war candidate, even though that claim is shaky when you look at certain things she's done in the past. But I don't even want to get into that right now. She doesn't focus on policy. She hasn't like differentiated herself from any of the other candidates with anything that really stands out. And I think that that's hurt her more than anything else in this race.
Well, really fast on that, I think like she's gonna be at the November debate. And based on that interaction, based on the stuff with Hillary, like of the few questions they'll give her, and you know that because she's not polling super high, they're not gonna ask her 30 questions. She has assured that some big chunk of them are gonna be about this, rather than about her stance on whatever issue you wanna bring up. If instead she turned every time that she goes on a show like this from a conversation about that to, you know what, I'm not gonna dignify these ridiculous attacks. I'm gonna focus on my plan for clean energy or my plan for education or my plan for criminal justice, then maybe that's what they would be asking you at the debate next time.
That's a great point.
Yeah, John, you're kind of getting at the main point at this, which is when we're looking at Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, like we're looking at a couple of other different campaigns, we're ultimately looking at a campaign that isn't really viable for the presidency right now. We had the whole primary process, we got to shop around and look at candidates, but now the rubber's hitting the road and we have to look at who's actually viable. And so with Tulsi Gabbard still being in the campaign, it's mostly to like politically save face. So it's more about what can she do with this time she has right now. The media criticism stuff will do very well to The View. You're right in your point that The View is just a horrible organization considering they have such an audience and this is what they do with their political coverage is kind of lame. And Tulsi's gonna score some really cheap points with her base attacking the media in that way. And she should because she's been smeared by Hillary in that way. But ultimately, when you look at her campaign, what is this about? This is just like mostly for saving her own face. It's not really about making use of the time she has, which I think would be a better way to do this. She made a pretty good forth for herself as being like, I'm gonna be the anti-war candidate. I'm gonna try to stand up for regime change. That obviously didn't really hold up to scrutiny that much, but even as a single issue candidate, this campaign is not really going very well.
Yeah, all right, well, we gotta move on to other topics. And this is probably gonna turn into a series on this show because I love it. Rich men crying, we have another example. We shared one with you yesterday. This one isn't as entertaining to watch, but it is fascinating. JP Morgan Chase CEO and chairman Jamie Dimon has been going after Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren. Now, as we all know, Elizabeth Warren has been proposing a wealth tax. She has really centered her campaign on the idea that this system of inequality means that we need to target the millionaires and, more importantly, billionaires like Jamie Dimon to ensure that they're paying their fair share. Well, Jamie Dimon doesn't like that and recently commented on Elizabeth Warren during a sit-down interview with CNBC. Take a look.
You've dealt with Senator Warren, obviously, plenty of times, whether recently or in hearings or when she was head of the CFPB. Do you think the characterization of her in the press that she's anti-business, anti-capitalism is fair?
Look, I don't know. You really have to ask her what she really means. She uses some pretty harsh words. Some would say vilifies successful people. So I don't like vilifying anybody. I think we should applaud successful people. A lot of people come to the company for opportunity and choice and success. We want that for everybody.
So this whole, this is now the second person, incredibly wealthy individual this week who has complained about feeling vilified. But what about the vilification of the working class for decades now? They're lazy. They don't know how to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. They just want handouts. They just want entitlements. I mean, they have been vilified over and over and over again by these corporate CEOs, by the corporate media. They have been left to fend for themselves. You have children in America literally sleeping on streets right now. No one cares about that vilification, right? But Jamie Dimon, sitting in his ivory tower somewhere, enjoying the privileges that this unfair, rigged economic system has given him, is complaining about feeling vilified. Cry me a goddamn river, okay?
Yeah, he says Elizabeth Warren's words about, bankers should pay more and fair share in taxes. They're exploiting the economy. Those are pretty harsh words. I agree with Jamie Dimon. So is foreclosure.
Yes.
So are layoffs. So are all the things that JP Morgan Chase is responsible for and has been responsible for in contributing to the past recession, which people are still recovering from. So yeah, I really intensely rolled my eyes when Jamie Dimon said he felt, poor Jamie Dimon, I'm vilified for why can't we just talk about successful people and make everyone successful? Because if that was really his goal and that was really his motto, he wouldn't be a banker. He'd be giving away all of his money. JP Morgan Chase's job as an institution would be to just fund projects and do these different things to make the world better and make people more successful. But he doesn't care about success. He cares about his bottom line, and really only his bottom line and whatever impacts that.
Yeah. By the way, for this series, I was seeing some stuff about Bill Gates being asked about Elizabeth Warren versus Donald Trump, if that's what it was. And I think that will probably provide some fodder. He's not crying necessarily, but he's doing some vilifying of his own, or at least not being as clear as he should be. But you can look into that. On Jamie Dimon, you know what word I hate? I hate the word successful. Because all it literally means is we're looking at your current situation saying you're a success. But because of the way that capitalism has ensorcelled America for decades and decades and decades, we also imply without stating that you're a better person and that you got there for good reasons and totally morally upright, no issues with it whatsoever. You can be successful and not be a billionaire, you'd be shocked to find out. And you can be a billionaire and you can be one of the worst people literally on the face of the earth. But they use words like that to trick people into thinking that Jamie Dimon has 1 ounce more moral value than any person who is, answering phones at a call center or flipping burgers or whatever. And the difference between those two groups, and I agree with you, the working class gets vilified far more than the rich on TV, but they both do to some extent. The difference is that if you are flipping burgers, you can't get on literally any cable news show you want. But Jamie Dimon, anytime he wants to defend himself, he can get on there.
It's such a great point. And I just had a flashback of, when the 1994 earthquake happened in Northridge, California, our home was damaged. And we, where my dad was working at the time, he couldn't go back to work. He was a wage worker, which meant he wasn't making any money at that time until his place of work opened back up again. And so FEMA came in, helped out, and also provided food stamps for people, including my family, right? And I remember going to the grocery store with my mom with food stamps, which were literally like coupons back in the day. So everyone who's in line knows that you're using food stamps. And I remember being vilified, my family being vilified as And everyone knows, we're all in the same area. Everyone knows that this earthquake just happened and people are suffering. But the vilification is so deep and it's so ingrained in our society today that even people in the same working class will vilify each other because that talking point gets regurgitated over and over and over again in the media, and it's disgusting. But anyway, I do want to go to Elizabeth Warren's response to this, and I think that she's actually played this really well. Here's what she says. It's really simple. Jamie Dimon and his buddies are successful in part because of the opportunities, workforce, and public services that we all paid for. Right. It's only fair that he and his billionaire friends chip in to make sure everyone else has a chance to succeed. She also writes, the fact that they've reacted so strongly, so angrily to being asked to chip in more tells you all you need to know. The system is working great for the wealthy and well-connected, and Jamie Dimon doesn't want that to change. I'm going to fight to make sure it works for everyone. Now, regardless of what you think of Elizabeth Warren, you have to give her credit for how she played this, because this is the type of economic populist messaging that does resonate with people. Doesn't resonate with people like Leon Cooperman, a multi-billionaire that we spoke about yesterday. He's the one who literally had an emotional breakdown on national television over the idea of having to choose between Donald Trump and Elizabeth Warren, and that was following a 20-minute anti-Warren rant. I enjoyed watching that video so much that I brought it back for today, so let's watch.
I am not in favor of all this impeachment inquiry. I want the American people to decide in November of 2020 what the future should be.
I think, I think it's kind of obvious people can not only see the emotion on your face, but hear it in your voice when you talk about this, Lee. Why?
I care. That's it.
You're the worst.
Delicious.
Oh my God.
That edit wasn't necessary, but it was.
It was 100% necessary. All right, we got to move on. We have some other news. As we all know, 3 members of the squad have endorsed Bernie Sanders. However, Ayanna Pressley held out until today, and she has gone in a different direction. She is endorsing Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let's watch.
The American people deserve to be represented by elected officials who see them, who listen to them, and who fight for them. I have seen Elizabeth in small church basements and in packed gymnasiums, and she is consistent. She never loses sight of the people. You've all heard about the senator's plans, but here's the thing. The plans are about power. Who has it, who refuses to let it go, and who deserves more of it. For Elizabeth and for me, power belongs in the hands of the people. That's why she's fighting for fundamental change that restores power to those who've been left behind and centers those who've never had access to it in the first place. This election is a fight for the very soul of our nation. Elizabeth knows how to fight and she knows how to win. I'm proud to call her my senator. I can't wait to call her our president. I'm Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and I represent the Massachusetts 7th Congressional District, and I'm proud to endorse Elizabeth Warren for president. Big structural change. Can't wait. Let's get to work.
So one of the tweets, actually the tweet that received the most likes following this announcement was AOC's response to Ayanna Pressley's endorsement. And remember, Representative Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed Bernie Sanders, so they have different candidates that they're endorsing.
Was the response okay, boomer?
No.
No?
The response, and I'm so appreciative of this response, and I think that we need more of this in this race, right? Regardless of who you're supporting. It was a heart emoji. Okay, so it's showing solidarity, it's showing that you can have a disagreement in regard to who you support, and you can debate the policies. I think that's important. You can critique the policies. I think that's important. But I don't like demonizing people who might disagree with you on who to endorse. I don't like going out of your way to needlessly demonize Warren or Bernie, regardless of where you stand. I think it's really unhealthy, and it really turns me off, especially on Twitter. Look, I've been critical of many of Warren's approaches, especially when it comes to how she intends to pay for Medicare for all. But that doesn't mean that I hate her as a person. I don't think she's the same as Hillary Clinton. I like Bernie more because I'm to the left of Warren. And that's okay. That's okay. Doesn't mean I need to demonize her or make her out to be something that she's not.
Yeah, my reaction when I saw that was, that's too bad. And that was about as far as it went. I wasn't shocked by it. I mean, you can explain it in a number of different ways, which maybe we'll get into, but I like when I see something and I feel my initial reaction, I look to the progressives that I admire the most and see their reaction. And AOC is obviously very high up on that list, and she had the heart because she doesn't all of a sudden hate Ayanna Pressley. And Ilhan Omar responded with a heart because she's still gonna work with him. And the thing is, honestly, while I disagree with Ayanna Pressley. I think that if big structural change can't wait, then I would support Bernie Sanders. I do kind of get it. She's in the same state and all of that, and she's a free-thinking person who can support whoever she wants. And at the end of the day, if the candidate ends up being Bernie Sanders, Ayanna Pressley is going to campaign for Bernie Sanders. And if it ends up being Warren, AOC and Ilhan are going to campaign for Warren. And Bernie is too, and if it's Bernie, Warren is going to. They don't hate each other, however much some people online might want them to. They obviously disagree, and Bernie wants to be president, and Warren wants to be president. They have a pretty fundamental disagreement there, but they will end up supporting the other one if it ends up being them.
Yeah, there was much ado last cycle with Warren's endorsement of Hillary early on, and there have been some criticisms, some good, some less so.
Not during the primaries, though. Warren didn't endorse anyone during the primaries. She waited until after, after Hillary Clinton had already secured the nomination.
But there's still people online who will drag her for that endorsement still. And I like AOC's tweet and the way she's setting the tone that we can have disagreements on the margins, and Twitter exists so we can have all these disagreements forever for the end of history. But think outside of yourself for a moment if you're one of these people online. Ayanna Pressley and AOC, or even Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, on the political spectrum in the United States are so close to each other compared to what we're fighting in 2020 that these differences on the margins, we need to be able to kind of come together and get ready for that. Because 2020 is gonna be a fight. We saw just today the results of 2019's elections, and it's looking kind of good for Democrats. But if we're still splintered and arguing over who sent the endorsement at which time and for which person who's slightly left the other person is, there's differences there, but ultimately I would be happy with a Sanders presidency. I'd be happy with a Warren presidency. I'd be happy if they're on the same ticket. I think that'd be kind of cool. But I think we should just be fine and respect Ayanna Pressley's decision. Like you said, there are local contexts to this. Maybe she wants that Senate seat in the future.
Yeah, it's not a winning strategy to go after Ayanna Pressley and demonize her because she didn't support the candidate you want. Look, it's one endorsement. Endorsements are cool and everything. They don't make or break an election, and so everything's going to be fine. I personally have a disagreement. I think that, again, I think you brought up a great point. If you want structural change, that is exactly what Bernie is running on. I mean, he's talking about real structural change, and it is interesting to see, Warren take on some of his language. And one of the biggest criticisms in comparing Bernie Sanders to Elizabeth Warren is that Bernie Sanders is about empowering the American worker, whereas Warren is more about protecting the American worker. And now all of a sudden you're hearing her use power language, which I think is fascinating. But nonetheless, I mean, look at the policies. They're very similar, but there are different approaches. And I do think that Bernie is to the left of Warren, especially when it comes to canceling all student loan debt and things like that. So I think we can have these civil arguments, debates, disagreements, conversations, but at the end of the day, you need to know who your true enemies are, and it's not people who are supporting a progressive candidate. All right, so we gotta take a break. When we come back, we have more news for you, including TI, and it's unfortunate, so we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
I'll predict right here for you, Chris. I think Donald Trump will leave office before his term is up. He'll be humiliated, embarrassed, and I know him. He's not going to want to lose, and he's going to run for the hills.
You got that bet all day long.
Okay, let's get after it. Now, so look, Cenk has made some good predictions, and this is in good fun. I could not disagree more.
There's a little bromance between the two of them. You got that bet all day long, Janky, you. Oh, you stop. In the meantime, let's call him out on the damage.
No, but
I just got a Roku set. Did basically a little bit of channel surfing, and I was like, there we are.
Yeah.
There we are. And then I turned it on, and it was John and Brett on Damage Report making fun of me.
Oh no.
So you are so busted. I even took a picture of it, okay? They're talking about my predictions. I got a new prediction for you, John Idarola.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody.
Young Turks is the largest online news network, not a big deal. We're gonna rock the boat. We're gonna be counter-establishment. We're gonna tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Fourth day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do, we cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair elections. And when he told the cops that day when they came to drag her away, and he said, if you're gonna chain her, you're gonna chain me. If you're gonna arrest her, you're gonna arrest me.
I'm gonna get right to our next story to make sure we have enough time to cover it. So, rapper T.I. was on a podcast, Ladies Like Us. And during the podcast, he talked about his 18-year-old daughter, 18 years old, meaning she's an adult, and discussed the importance of her purity. Take a look.
Not only have we had the conversation, we have yearly trips to the gynecologist to check her height.
Oh, hey. I'm done with you right now.
So,
do you go with her? She's a prisoner.
Yes, I go with her.
You go with her? Somebody check on Deja.
I go with her.
She's a prisoner.
So let me tell you, right? So this is one time we go. I think this might have been after her 16th birthday. And this is what we do. Like, right after the birthday, we celebrate.
And, we go and check her hymen after.
And then,
what the?
Usually like the day after the party, she's enjoying her gifts. I put a sticky note on the door. Gyno. Tomorrow, 9:30.
Oh, this is great.
So he was also asked about, how he's able to do this because, there are HIPAA regulations which prevent the disclosure of these types of meetings with doctors, and he addresses that in the next clip.
He's like, well, sir, I have to, in order for me to share information. I say, Deja, they want you to sign this. They want you to sign
this right now.
They want you to sign
I need to know if your hymen's still there.
So we can share information. Is there anything that you would not want me to know? Oh, okay. See, Doc, ain't no problem.
And then finally, he addresses the very accurate reality that the hymen isn't a good way of determining whether anyone is a virgin because it can be broken in many other ways. Here's what he has to say about that.
You are the worst.
And so then, right? Then they come and say, okay, well, I just want you to know that there are other ways besides sex that the hymen can be broken.
Right.
Like bike riding,
Really?
athletics, horseback riding.
That's aggressive. That is aggressive
and,
writing.
You know, just other forms of athletic physical activity.
Is she an athlete?
No.
Oh, there you
So
go.
I say,
You're like, sorry, that's not a possibility.
I say, look, Doc.
She's not.
She don't ride no horses. She don't ride no bikes. She don't play no sports, man. Just check the hymen, please.
So this is
incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah, more than uncomfortable. So look, I know firsthand like what it's like to have so much of your value based on your purity, right? Because like Armenians in general are very conservative, and I grew up in a conservative household, and I remember the discussions about the importance of your hymen. And I mean, even till this day, there are marriages where if the woman doesn't bleed on the night of her wedding, it's a huge scandal. And back in the day, a couple would consummate their marriage, and then the woman would have to display the sheets to prove that she was pure, right? And so being told over and over again by the most important man in your life, right? Your father, that your value and your worth and your everything is based on whether or not your hymen is intact is gross. And it's also traumatizing for when you finally do decide that the time is right for you to become sexually active. You feel like you're worth nothing. You feel like you're not a valuable human being. You feel like you're not pure, like you're dirty, like you did something wrong. This is not okay. I don't know why the hosts of this podcast are giggling at this. It's not funny.
They're giggling because of CI. And they got this huge guest on their show, and they don't want to stop and be like, yo, you're admitting things that actually cast you in an incredibly poor light. You sound crazy, or you don't know what century it is. And it's sad too, because I don't listen to music, so I knew nothing about him effectively up until I recently watched Rhythm and Flow and thought, oh, this guy's actually awesome today. And it's like, oh, I'm glad, I'm gonna go back to nothing. This is not, he's saying this as if it portrays him as a strong man. Look at me, I take care of my daughter. No, that's not what you're projecting at all.
You don't trust her enough that you need to take her to a doctor and have someone examine her genitals to make sure her hymen is intact.
I hope he's joking.
That is,
Toxic masculinity at its worst, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. Sorry we end on a kind of a bad note, but thank you to John Idarola and Dan Evans. Check out his podcast, Audio Face. Check out The Damage Report every morning, Monday through Friday. The Conversation is next.
You know, Old School was pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben, Jank.
This is my problem with Forever 21. This is like a really cool turtleneck. Like it looks nice, it looks soft, it looks professional. I can wear it to work. And then you pick it up and turn it around and the back says taco booty. And it's like, what?
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
And she was like, does mom know you curse that much? And I was like, I didn't curse at all in the movie. I played silent mom.
Yeah, right. If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
We're in Hollywood.
I
Raise
know,
your hand if you're not a vegan.
Okay.
See, nobody.
He's like Kevin with Ben Affleck. He's like afraid to text me.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck.
But what makes you stop right before 40? You know, what makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m.
I don't mean to get upset.
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
There's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
I heard of it. I just had some in the car.
I'll tell you who I'm not Ben Mankiewicz. Have you guys ever felt that?
Not ever.
But I imagine you could be famous and not give a shit. But it's tough to be a human and not give a shit.
We got to let the podcast guys go to TYT.com/join to become a member, get the whole show. And now it's just the three of us.
That's it.
Okay,
this is the intimate hour.
By the way, the last half hour of this, we're not even rolling.
He's a bad neighbor.
Neighbors know I'll be watching.
We're always
Please
going
tell
to
me you do not waste your wife's time with this ridiculously stupid argument.
The Bad News Bears is a movie that taught an entire generation how to not win. How to lose gracefully.
See, I watch movies.
Kingsley.
I'm done with both of you.
Once Greg starts laughing, I can't stop. We're out of time. So
are we?
Yeah, I know.
That was 90?
Yeah.
I was just getting started.
And I was just gonna ask you about getting high.
Snoogans, Snoochie Boochies.
And members, of course, you can get the whole damn thing. TYT.com join and free trial. And Old School with the old folks.
John, come back.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Bernie Sanders wants to break Wall Street, and he wants to break it real bad.
Hello and welcome to The Conversation. I am John Idarola. If you were just watching the live show, you might have seen me joining Dan Evans and Anna Kasperi in the second hour there. Normally you can find me on the Friday Power Panel of the Young Turks, and of course I host the Damage Report every day on the Young Turks Network. But today on The Conversation, I'm very excited to talk to two really interesting individuals. On one hand, the remaking of our Congress to be more progressive, more representative of where the country's actually going. And a little bit later on in the show, if you stick around, sports columnist Brad Bradford Davis is going to be joining us to break down a really interesting racism scandal involving the owner of the Houston Astros and some related issues having to do with the current state of sports journalism and some scandals that have been going on right now in that area. But before we get to that, I want to start with, again, the fight for a better Congress. And we have a candidate who's joining us now, running for Oregon's 3rd District, Albert Lee. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, John, good to see you again.
Yeah, I'm glad to talk to you and give you a chance to make your case, introduce yourself to hopefully a new group of people online. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. But since there's probably a lot of new people here, introduce yourself. How did you get involved in this? So this is a big run. You're going against an incumbent Democrat in a contested primary. What's going on with that?
Great, thanks, John. My name's Albert Lee. I'm running to represent the people of the 3rd District of Oregon to the United States Congress. I'm running because I believe that democracy requires choice, something we simply haven't had here in over a generation. I'm running because we face a series of crises here in this district, across the country and around the world that require bold action now, not just inspirational and aspirational words. I'm running because I believe in the basic tenets of the Democratic Party when it comes to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's beyond time that we uplift some new voices from some other backgrounds, from some other experiences of our state. Lastly, I'm running because I think it is time that we end this rule by an oligarchy of elite multimillionaire politicians and replace them with citizen representatives who know the struggle, who won't take corporate contributions, and who will truly represent and fight for the people.
Okay, so you covered a lot of territory there, and I want to return to various parts of that. But before we get into various components of your platform, talk to me about the last few years for your district. So we have this incumbent, Earl Blumenauer. What has he been doing? How has he been using this powerful position that he's gotten?
Great. You know, Earl's he's been our representative for almost a quarter of a century, almost 24 years now. And quite frankly, during that time, he's kind of kept the seat warm. Really hasn't done a whole lot to help this district. We've faced a series of crises, including a homelessness crisis that has just exploded, the lack of affordable housing and living wages, and our climate emergency. And during that time, basically, he's taken that time to establish some sort of a progressive brand, but with no real meat behind it. Hasn't really actually done anything to accomplish anything. So I've got a lot of people that say, hey, I love Earl. You know, why are you going up against him? And then when I turn the question back around to folks and I say, well, what has he done for us? Crickets.
Mm-hmm. So you were talking about meat. Let's get into the meat now. You mentioned the climate emergency. It's been an interesting week in that area. Although substantively the United States has not been abiding by the Paris Climate Accords. We did find out this week that the Trump administration has contacted the UN and said we're going to formally remove ourselves from that. Now, thankfully, we have had more local and state level efforts to do something about climate change, which means that as a congressperson, you would have the ability to do something to help us fight this. In that area, what would you like to do?
Yeah, number one, the Green New Deal. We need to have a Green New Deal. We need to have a just transition to make sure that we don't leave folks behind. You know, folks that are working in the fossil fuel industry, we need to make sure that they have a livelihood that they can make and that we don't leave anybody behind on those things. You were talking about the states stepping up because the federal government isn't. We have a West Coast block right here with Washington, Oregon, and California really leading the path. And we need to continue to do that. We need to take a look and address the issues. We have a system right now, an economic system that focuses on overconsumption, overproduction, and built-in obsolescence that is simply just not sustainable. We only have one planet, and we need to figure it out and take care of it. We've got 7 to 11 years to do so.
Yeah. Now, if you make it into Congress, one of the biggest legislative fights, assuming we have a Democrat who wins the White House, is going to be over the future of healthcare. And the talk about Medicare for all has dominated a lot of this primary. Different forms of it, of course. You've got people pushing for Medicare for all. There's Medicare Choice, there's Medicare for all who want it, Medicare Extra Crispy. There's a million different forms of it. What form of an expansion or maintenance of the healthcare status quo are you pushing for?
Single payer, universal Medicare for all. That is the only way we're gonna solve this. All those other options just simply don't work. For those folks that talk about having a public option, they don't understand how insurance works. You take and try to pool the risk of the entire population and then spread that hurt, spread that pain. With a public option, what you're effectively doing is you're allowing the corporations, the for-profit health insurance companies to cherry pick all of the healthy people, and then you leave all of the people that really are hurting into that public option. That public option eventually collapses, and then we either resort to going back to something like before the Affordable Care Act, where some people just simply don't get insurance, or we go to a point where private health insurance increases the cost for those folks and lowers the quality of care and lowers the coverage.
So we've talked a little bit about how you're differentiating yourselves from the current incumbent. You're not the only person who is vying in this primary for that position, though. You also have Charles Rand Barnett. Talk to me about the relationship between you and Charles Rand Barnett. What are some of the important differences that people need to know about?
I don't know a whole lot about him. I know just looking at his website, he says that he is basically Earl Light, that he wants to kind of follow the things that Earl wants to do. And I think that there was some mention about doing something with Mars. I can't really speak intelligently.
Was that Mars?
Yeah, I think so. Something about sending robots to Mars or something.
Okay.
But I really haven't been focusing on that. I've been focusing on the future of this district and of our country. It's not about Earl, it's about our future. And when I look at it, I just say, hey, we need to have somebody that knows the struggle, that knows the experiences that people are facing here. People are sick and tired of having the same issues happening here. The concerns that we have are real, they are critical, and we need to address them. We haven't had anything in the way of addressing the homelessness crisis or the lack of affordable housing and living wages. And for me, I'm looking and I say, well, how many multimillionaire career politicians really understand and know what it means to live on minimum wage?
Yeah,
I do. How many multimillionaire career elite politicians know what it means to pay a mortgage-sized school loan? I do.
Yeah.
So we need folks that understand the struggles that we're going through and look for workable solutions that are going to take care of our entire district and our country.
I'm sorry, this might seem like a weird aside, but I was just reminded of on Halloween, the conservative pundit Tomi Lahren. She dressed up like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and had a tweet mocking AOC, including mocking the fact that she had been a bartender. And that struck me as very weird, that you would think that attacking a person, a politician, as having come from a working class background, that you would think that that would hurt them in some way. It seems to me as if people would be demanding more people who had come from positions like them, who knew what the experience of average working class Americans was like, less corporate lawyers exclusively. When you're communicating with voters, the fact that you, as you point out, that you've been on minimum wage, that you've dealt with student loan debt, I'm imagining that that's probably pretty helpful, right?
Absolutely, it resonates with folks. People relate to me and I relate to them. One of the stories that I like to talk about is the minimum wage and how it has been suppressed over the last 30 and 40 years. In 1990, I worked for $3.80 in St. Louis, in North County, St. Louis, next door to Ferguson, at a fast food restaurant. I think I actually got paid $3.12 an hour, a student wage. But if you put that into a real money calculator and try to see what that is worth today, at the most optimal, it's worth $13.10, which is more than the minimum wage here in Portland. Even at its most conservative estimate, it is at $7.10, which is below the federal minimum wage. In other words, the minimum wage has remained suppressed for over 30 years, quite frankly, for over 40 years, while the cost of everything else has gone up. People are struggling, and when we talk about the suppression of the minimum wage, that suppresses all wages. Yeah. So people from the lower class to the working class to the middle class are all struggling, and they're all feeling the pinch, and we need to do something to help them.
Let's say you win the primary, you get through, you win the general election, you enter Congress. We don't necessarily know exactly what the political environment is going to be like then. I know that in the Democratic primary, in the presidential race, for instance, Joe Biden appears to think that if Donald Trump is defeated, that many Republicans in Congress are going to sort of come to their senses and start to once again work in a bipartisan way with Democrats. And there are others that believe that there's going to be a massive struggle, even if Trump is pushed out of the White House, to pass progressive legislation. What are you sort of anticipating when you get in there? What sort of fight, what sort of opportunities for bipartisan behavior do you think you'll find?
Look, I'm all for having bipartisan cooperation, but it does not mean leaving things on the table. It means fighting for what you truly believe in, and that's one of the things that I, quite frankly, have issue with Democrats generally. Is it seems like they negotiate themselves out of things before they even get to the table to fight against Republicans. We need to do everything we can to support the working class. We need to do everything we can to support unions. We need to do everything we can to fix this climate emergency. And that doesn't mean compromising on those issues. We need to fight and fight hard because we are running out of time.
And one final question. I noticed that brand new Congress has endorsed you. Have you been in talks with any of the other national, like large progressive organizations like that?
Yes, we're working with a lot of them. But just a quick plug for brand new Congress. We're going to be out in DC next week and weekend for the brand new Congress summit, and we're going to meet with about 29 other endorsed candidates from all over the country. So I'm looking forward to being there and uplifting each other and working together, because we need to add to the squad. We need to build up a progressive bench that's going to help shift us and move us into the right direction. And
where can our viewers find out more about you and your candidacy?
Absolutely. You can find out more information at albertlee2020.com. Also on our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook pages.
Albert Lee, candidate for Oregon's 3rd district in the primary. Great getting a chance to check in with you one more time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Take care.
We're going to take a short break. We come back. We're going to be speaking with Bradford Davis, a sports columnist, after this.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years,
Right.
believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you gotta force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
The Monsanto Corporation continues to sell a herbicide called Roundup, but you should know that that herbicide is a potential killer. Recent studies have linked Roundup to significant increases in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. That's a cancer that can be devastating to you and the people you love. While Roundup continues to cause cancer, Monsanto continues to make huge profits from the sale of Roundup. They will not take it off the market. If you or a loved one are exposed to Roundup at work or home and then developed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you may be entitled to financial compensation, and it's important for you to take action now and hold Monsanto accountable.
Cenk Uygur joins us.
We are progressive and unapologetically so. Very happy to say that millennial and Gen Z generations are massively progressive along with us.
Democrats, they've been so weak for so long. For God's sake, fight for your side.
I would not like to compromise with Republicans. I would like to defeat them. Lynn, do you support Donald Trump?
Yes, I like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we think you're racist. The 5 black kids in Central Park did not commit the rape. He said, who cares? Keep them in prison anyway. They probably did something. He's a terrible guy. Very fine people on the side chanting, Jews will not replace us. He says we should ban all Muslims. Well, that's bigotry by definition. He said it during the campaign trail over and over again. Called Latinos criminals and rapists. See, you're used to Republicans being strong on television and Democrats cowering. New day in America. Progressives, we actually fight back.
Welcome back to the conversation, everybody. So if you are familiar with me and my work, if you've been watching for a while, you probably know that there's basically no one in this building right now who knows less about sports than I do. I don't know the inside baseball, the inside basketball, or pretty much anything else. And yet, during my prep for this interview, fascinating story of racism in the ownership of the Houston Astros, implications involving the Department of Defense, and also the future of online journalism that has implications that go far beyond sports. And so I'm hoping to learn a lot. Hopefully you will learn a lot as well, as we're joined by our next guest, sports columnist for the New York Daily News, Bradford Davis. Welcome to the conversation.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Very glad to have you here. And like I said, very interesting story you've written up here about the ownership of the Houston Astros and some of the lawsuits that they're facing. So for our audience, catch them up to speed a little bit on what's been going on.
Well, to be clear, had faced and ended up settling some time ago. But the owner of the Houston Astros, a man named Jim Crane, before he made his billions rather. With a logistics company based in Houston, where he owns now the Houston Astros. And during his time running that company, there were significant lawsuits, or other accusations against him of racism, or rather the running of the company, racism, gender discrimination. All sort, kind of anything that is bad about running a company existed with Jim Crane's previous ownership. It's very reminiscent of the whole Donald Sterling scenario, where Sterling was banned from the league because they caught him, touching the 1/3 rail that exists within, I guess, American discourse about racism, which is saying a racial slur.
Yeah.
But before that, he had made his fortune off of his housing business, but it also discriminated relentlessly against Mexican Americans in Southern California. So it was one of those. It was a scandal that never actually took off, and the same thing happened, in my opinion, with the Houston Astros. Jim Crane had had run a company in a very scandalous light, had paid out hundreds of settlements to employees at his company, and yet didn't really suffer any consequences.
I'm really glad that you pointed out that that he has been able to so far dodge actually being recorded saying something racist. And it's weird that, even in the case of like something over in politics with Donald Trump, many people for years have been like, they're gonna find the tape of him. And it's like, do you really need to hear a person say something when you can take a look at their hiring practices, their pay practices, and all of that? It is very weird that we focus so much on what feels like concrete evidence when there's so much evidence out there that paints a pretty clear picture.
Yeah, saying mean words is one thing, but a history of employment discrimination tangibly impacts lives. That is, in my opinion, the true scandal. And it's a shame that he wasn't held more accountable by Major League Baseball when he's pursued a purchase of the Houston Astros sometime after those settlements came out. The sale did go through, and the Astros have been very successful under his regime. But I wanted to bring some attention to his past after the Astros had one of their top executives had, harassed really a journalist who was a advocate for domestic violence causes within baseball.
Yeah.
Because the Astros had employed a pitcher who was, I believe, credibly accused of domestic violence, so much so that Major League Baseball suspended that pitcher for some time last year. And so, you kind of see the same through line of not handling serious offenses within the organization. Now, finally, this executive was terminated after a week of constant scrutiny about his actions. But the Astros had denied it at first. They had tried to smear that journalist's testimony. They did everything they could to try and evade the situation.
Yeah.
It's a playbook that is sadly all too familiar with let's call crane run organizations, and I hope that that there's more attention brought to that.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know this, I learned something really interesting from your article that logistics company had been sued by the DOJ 4 times for allegations of war profiteering, which when I got to that, I was like, I thought I was reading about sports. I did not expect this. That they're apparently overcharging.
I was.
Sorry, continue.
I was shocked. No, it's fine. I was shocked. Like, oh, it's not just racism or gender discrimination. They every kind of like bad thing you can imagine had followed Crane Logistics or rather Eagle Logistics, the company he had run. And again, like I said, it's while the Department of Justice has not yet sued the Houston Astros for being good at baseball or anything like that. It's the word I keep coming back to is through line. It's a pattern that I think I want discussed.
So as I said in the intro, I don't actively follow any sports now, although I have in the past. So just like as an outsider viewing it, it seems like in multiple sports, the owners of sports teams don't necessarily tend to be the best people. And racism seems to be a thing that crops up pretty commonly. And I'm curious, sometimes it seems to hurt them. Sometimes they seem to skate by and it's not much of an issue. As you've been following a number of different stories, what do you think is the defining factor that says that there will be consequences or not for the sorts of things that you've identified in this case with the Houston Astros?
Saying the N-word.
Really, yeah.
Or saying something, that is obscene, that would, the kind of thing that would get me bleeped, on a show like this. That seems to be the only thing that really affects things. Mark Schott, for example, who was the owner of the Reds and Reds for many years, was she was actually given serious consequences for making very racially, I hate the phrase, but racially charged statements about her black players at the time. So that's the only kind of thing that really moves the needle, sadly, in throughout any of the 3 professional sports. I mean, the Washington football team famously has a name that is considered a slur by many First Nations people. So that is unfortunately the only thing that really is a true third rail, but a whole lot of casual employment discrimination accusations like what happened with the Astros, or not with the Astros, but rather with Jim Crane's previous business, get swept under the radar or swept under the rug and never really given full consequences that lead to results.
So let's turn to another topic now, because although, look, I wasn't like a daily viewer or reader of Deadspin, but I'm familiar with it, and I've been following at least to some extent the development with it. There was this attempt to sort of get them to stop talking about things outside of hard sports information, the mass layoffs and everything. As a sports journalist yourself, what have you made of this set of developments with Deadspin?
Well, it certainly drives up my own anxieties of working in a very insecure industry. But I truly admire, what Deadspin was. They told the truth fearlessly. They have brought many extremely important stories to light. Some very silly stories as well. Mm-hmm. But plenty of serious ones. One that comes to mind is the culture of sexual assault, at Baylor University that was Deadspin did a whole lot of the legwork and reporting there to bring to bring that to the front of I guess the public mind. They it's very frustrating that a website, a company that was independently successful, that had found an audience, a readership that worked for them, was first litigated to death. That in a way that led to their financial troubles, being forced into bankruptcy, and then sold to a number of owners that did not rightly steward what they had, this very valuable asset they had, finally leading to what truly killed Deadspin, which was an edict from their current owner to stick to sports. So that led to a lot of their employees leaving leaving the company, and by doing so, maintaining their integrity. So again, nonetheless, even as Deadspin is sort of a zombie of sorts at this point, none of the staff that were previously, rather the editorial staffers are with the company anymore. I really admire and appreciate that they took a stance, that they decided not to take a paycheck, so that they can I guess rest their head at night knowing that they practice real journalism to the end.
I agree. It's a difficult thing to do. I mean, none of those people were pulling in millions of dollars, but I respect what they did. So one final question, just because you mentioned the anxiety it gives you, is it possible that the mass resigning and the fact that it seems like the majority of the public is siding with the writers in this, is it possible that might send a signal to other potential executives or moves to sort of like more tamp down on journalism at other outlets, that this could actually be counterproductive for them?
Shoot, I certainly hope so. I should also say that, I have my own writing has benefited dramatically from Deadspin. Even now, I have multiple coworkers who are Deadspin alum. So, and that's at the New York Daily News, which is not a new media institution by any means. But yet, I think in a lot of ways, though, no publication is perfect. We sincerely try to I think speak truth to power in our sports coverage.
Yeah.
And I hope that it emboldens other writers and editors and editorial staffers to fearlessly speak, to tell the truth, to be accountable to the readers, and that it kind of leaves a few people shook about what they're getting into when they decide to buy a media company.
Yeah.
So that hopefully it meets out the the private equity types and the and the people who just want to turn what we do into a content farm, and leads to owners who actually believe in the cause. I know there are probably not too many of them, but for those out there, I hope that those folks are the ones that end up placing the highest bid going forward.
I share that same hope. Bradford Davis of the New York Daily News, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And for everyone watching at home, thank you for joining us for this episode of The Conversation. Obviously, we've got more planned for this week. Eventually, Cenk will be returning as well, if that's something that you're inexplicably a fan of. Totally just joking, he's not here, he can't say anything. But anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more of my work, you can of course watch The Damage Report every day. You can follow me on Twitter at John Idarola. We've got a post game that's going to be coming up in just a little bit, so stick around, enjoy.
I mean, I think it's kind of obvious people can not only see the emotion on your face, but hear it in your voice when you talk about this, Lee. Why?
I care. That's it. You can't let that happen to me. You can't let that happen to me.
It's excellent. It's excellent.
Such a nice touch, Bart. That's another Bart original. For those of you who wonder, whenever there's some like cool audio thing happening to the fade in, that's Bart, man.
Yeah, the audience loved it, Bart. So thank you. And
welcome to Pogos.
More importantly, I loved it. So just not more importantly, but I did love it. It was really good. Okay, so Dan Evans joins me for hour 2.
Hour 3.
It is hour 3. That's true. And so there was an awesome poll done by Reuters that I wanted to share, and I'm sure you have lots of thoughts about it as well. So let's discuss. So a new Reuters poll indicates that on a variety of issues, Democratic voters tend to think that Bernie Sanders has the best stance on these policies, right? So again, this is a Reuters poll, so it is credible. This isn't some random polling organization. And what they did is they spoke to both independent and Democratic voters, likely primary voters. And what they wanted to see was, all right, well, how do these candidates compare with one another when it comes to policy proposals? Who has the best policies? The poll asked respondents to select the candidate from the list below you think is best on that particular issue, with Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Beto O'Rourke, and Cory Booker as available selections. So there's a lot of people involved, which of course, if you look at the percentages, you're gonna notice that some of the percentages are low, but it's because it's splitting the vote among the respondents. Now, among independents and self-identified Democrats, these questions were not asked of Republican respondents for good reason. Bernie Sanders was the preferred candidate in every policy category, which included immigration, healthcare, the environment, and the economy and jobs. Sanders was the clear preference when it came to healthcare, at 24% of respondents saying that he had the best policy. It's a reflection of the central role of single-payer Medicare for All plan he played in his campaign, with Warren at 15 and Biden at 14. So I think this is good news, because one of the things that's frustrated me about Warren, I'm gonna be completely honest, I don't think Warren is a terrible candidate. I don't think Warren's the devil. I just think that Warren, I'm a little to the left of her, which is why Bernie resonates more with me. However, but the thing that's bothered me about Warren recently is that she's really like taken on Medicare for All as her proposal. And when she rolled out her plan for paying for it, she said over and over again, I am the only candidate who has thought of how to finance this. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what she said. When in reality, after she got criticized for the way she plans to finance it, her defenders, including Representative Jayapal, came out and said, no, but these are just pay for options, right? This isn't legislation, so don't get too up in arms about any specific detail. Okay, well, if that's the case, you know Bernie Sanders put out options to finance Medicare for All way before Warren did.
Yeah.
And he got no credit for that, which I just don't think that's okay. She's being dishonest, you know?
Yeah, like I liked a lot about this poll. It's, if anything, kind of reassuring, because there is so much spin about Medicare for All, or Medicare for all who want it, or Medicare for Extra. Like all these different names have been floating around.
Right.
But thankfully, it's not sticking, that people understand that Medicare for All means fundamentally a single payer system. And so that message is getting through kind of clearly. But yeah, I wish Elizabeth Warren, to me, her strength is when she goes against Jamie Dimon, when she goes against the financial sector, because there are people who on the internet, and their opinions are very overblown, but we'll state it, that they say that Warren won't fight for them. And I say, you're directly wrong if we're talking about financial issues.
Right.
Because Bernie's stronger, the Democratic Socialist thing is stronger on finance more broadly, but Warren's work at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, winning back millions, I want to say millions because I don't think it's billions, but yeah, billions of dollars.
Yeah, tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah, returned back to American households when they were stolen from the financial system. Like literally Warren will fight for you. Literally that's the best thing. It's her, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was her baby. She would do a really good job if she campaigned on the strengths of that instead of trying to co-op Medicare for all and not even like stand in and say, hey, I have this better defense for how do we pay for it? No, it's something that can be thrown up on a Fox News chyron and say, look, Pocahontas wants it to be $52 trillion for insurance. Like, it's ridiculous. It's not helping the cause.
I totally agree. My biggest issue with that was, aside from the dishonesty about her being the only candidate who's thought about how to pay for it, which was just not true, I felt that it was a political miscalculation because she allowed the critics to goad her into doing it, and you can't let them frame the discussion. You can't go based on their framing because you're not gonna appease them, you're not gonna persuade them, you're not gonna change their mind. The people who are attacking Medicare for all do so in such a disingenuous way, and you have to recognize that, and you need to play offense a little bit, right? And I think instead she's kind of played into some of these games that they're putting out there, and it's not helpful at all when it comes to something as important as Medicare for all.
Yeah, and like we've watched most of these Democratic debates together, and every time they start the Medicare for all portion of the questioning, it's always, how are you gonna pay for it? How are you gonna pay for it? How are you gonna pay for it? And I think we're smart enough to see, and a lot of our audience is smart enough to see that it's kind of a head fake. The media is just like asking this question because they think it's what voters are going to ask. When
and they're rich themselves, like they're worried about their own taxes.
Yeah, like why are we going to pay for it is the real question they actually want to be asking. But no, Warren kind of just keeps kind of plugging on with this, so.
Yeah, and I think like your assessment is so true and it's so fair. And I wish that these types of conversations happened more on social media. Like I went on Twitter very briefly today and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I don't really go on here. Because like, look, I don't think that the loudest voices on Bernie's camp are representative of Bernie voters, but they're the loudest. And like the constant, I think that they go way too hard against her. And the speculation that they try to put off as fact is not okay, right? Like she's actually a giant corporatist and she's good. No, she's not. She's not a giant corporatist, but I mean, I think there are fair critiques of what she's put out there already. And I like Bernie's policies more because he goes further than Warren does when it comes to incredibly important issues, including canceling student loan debt, including a proposal for affordable housing. I mean, he's put out a lot of detailed policies that resonate with me. That doesn't mean that Warren's a bad candidate, and I hope he wins the nomination, but I would happily vote for her as well. You know,
a Bernie administration or a Warren administration are miles, eons more left than anything I would have thought would be possible in the country, at least by 2016. And if you actually look at okay, 2016 was kind of fun. We thought of let's vote for Trump, let's see what happens. Now we see the human damage that's caused. People's lives have been lost because of this administration. We can't play that game anymore.
I totally agree, 100%. So let me give you some more on this Reuters poll. Sanders was the clear preference when it came to healthcare at 24%, I already mentioned that. Sanders also substantially ahead when it came to environmental issues, no surprise there. I mean, he's a huge proponent of the Green New Deal, polling at 20%, percentage points to Biden's 12 and Warren's 11. So Warren actually polled lower than Biden on the environment, which I think is strange because Biden does not want any big change when it comes to environmental policy.
Yeah, Warren can definitely be handed a little bit more credit there to voters, but I don't think, like we said, Warren's advertisement about herself on the Green New Deal hasn't been necessarily that strong. She's chosen to, for her own reasons, right or wrong, focus on other issues.
Yeah, exactly. 16% of respondents agreed Bernie Sanders was the best on immigration issues. And that was followed by Joe Biden with 13% and Elizabeth Warren on 10%. So Warren doesn't talk a lot about immigration policy. I'm sure she does talk about it, but not to the same extent as Bernie does. But yeah, I think this election on the Democratic side has really centered around economic policies, and I think that's important too. 15% of respondents said they would vote for Sanders were the primary held today, compared to 22% for Biden and 11% for Warren. So some people might wonder, well, okay, these same respondents said that they liked Bernie on policy way more than anyone else, so what's going on here? And unfortunately, I think this fear mongering about electability is resonating with some voters. I think that they genuinely think that in order to beat Trump, you need to nominate someone like Biden, and I just completely disagree with that.
I think that logic is falling apart. This idea that in order to appeal to Republican voters, you have to move yourself ideologically to the center. I think that, kind of like what you said earlier, we can't accept the framing of our opponents who are not acting in good faith and when we're making our arguments to ourselves. We have to say, no, I'm going to argue to you, conservative, prototypical worker in the middle of the country. I'm gonna say, no, this socialist plan is going to do better for you and your family and your neighbors and everyone you know. And this is why you shouldn't run away from the idea of the left. You should actually read the policies, see what you really do disagree with, but see what's just you're being scaremongered about.
Exactly, and I would come ready with all the different ways Donald Trump has actually screwed over the American worker during his presidency, how much he has screwed over the future of American workers when it comes to these massive tax cuts for the wealthy, which are permanent, but the almost no tax cuts for everyone else, which aren't even permanent, right?
Yeah.
So in 10 years, those tax cuts expire for the working class and the middle class. And by the way, the average, not the average, averages aren't a good way of determining the tax cuts, but I forget if it was the median, but it was like $44 per month extra in tax cuts for the majority of working class and middle class vote. Like that's not gonna change their lives, right?
Like here's a way to reframe the argument. We're all talking about, oh, how much did you get on your tax refund? How much did you save on taxes last year? Amazon paid $0 in taxes.
Exactly.
I don't care about you. Amazon's extremely way richer than you. They paid nothing in taxes.
Exactly.
Explain the system. That should be how we frame the argument. We have to force them to defend, oh, actually Jeff Bezos is successful and he wins really hard. And so that's why he should have $1 billion and be able, more than that, like several billions of dollars and be able to abuse his workers. Like, we have to frame it that way. If I could really fast, one thing I saw in the crosstabs of this poll that I really liked was that among independent voters, kind of to this topic of how do you appeal, Biden appeals most to independent voters, second, Bernie. Which goes to my point, like you don't need to say that the person in the center will appeal most to the right. Just explain why your policies will help people. Don't get caught in that false dichotomy.
Yeah, and the one other thing, are people watching the debates? Because, all right, let's put policy aside, let's put everything else aside. Let's just focus specifically on debate performance. And Biden, God, I never know how to word this because I'm not saying this to insult him, right? But I'm worried about his mental capacity, like because of things that have happened on that debate stage, right? Or the fact that he was campaigning in New Hampshire and he thought he was in Vermont. Like these issues are big in my opinion. And so I'm not trying to put out conspiracy theories and say he has a terminal illness. I'm not in that camp, trust me. But I do worry about him if he does win the nomination going up against Donald Trump. And believe me, I'm worried about his mental capacity as well, but to a different, in a different way.
Yeah.
I don't know, Biden, he slurs his words. I'm just worried about that. And I don't think people are paying attention to that, or at least they're not acknowledging it.
Yeah, so I'm happy that we're ultimately near the end of this primary cycle. I've hated it, just the worst. It's like Brexit. You know it's coming to an end, but it seems like as it gets close to the end, the deadline just gets pushed further. That's how election season feels like. And through it, we've been able to see what attributes do we care about and what we want the Democratic nominee to go against Trump. We want certain policies, but we also want certain ability to perform on the debate stage because Trump's vicious. He's gonna be a fighter. And that's why I was a little bit bullish on Kamala Harris in the beginning because before she did her campaign and with her campaign, I don't like her at all. She's proven that to me. But in the beginning, I thought, okay, I can see her on the debate stage against Donald Trump. That would be a good battle, Kamala would bring it. But Kamala's not really bringing it to this debate stage unless she's about to sell a t-shirt off of her line.
What's going on with that though? Because I thought the same thing. I thought Kamala Harris, I mean, you see her in hearings, like the way that she grilled Kavanaugh, those are her moments where she really shines, but it just didn't really come across on the debate stage.
Kamala reminds me of my aunt or my mom when she's figured out I've done something wrong. Like I've seen that face of like, she knows all the answers already. She's just asking you what you did to toy with you. Just to play with you and see like what you're gonna do.
And I love it. I love when she does that.
And like it's horrible, like sick, like scary aunt energy. But yeah, I'd like that against Trump.
Yeah.
I think every candidate's trying to toe the balance of how do I differentiate myself among Democrats and among the Democratic base without attacking too hard. And each candidate has a different success rate with that. You could say charitably that some candidates aren't calibrated very well. Like Beto O'Rourke sometimes goes a little bit Rep Beto, wow. He sometimes goes a little bit hard. Tulsi Gabbard sometimes goes a little bit hard and hitting Democrats, rightfully so. I'm not saying rightfully or wrongfully, but Bernie and Warren have done a good job of like differentiating themselves as candidates without necessarily trashing one person or the other. The only time that happens is when it gets into policy and voting records, which is where we want it to be.
That's where we want it to be, but I actually disagree with you a little bit. I think that Bernie hasn't done a good job in differentiating himself. We know the difference. I don't think that he's done a good job in messaging the difference. And it's because look, Bernie and Warren, whether people want to believe it or not, they are friends. They like each other. They work together. And he is not the type of candidate who attacks in general. And I can tell he feels particularly uncomfortable hitting, Warren in this election. But at the same time, like, look, when Warren's taking credit for the policy you wrote, you need to make it abundantly clear, like, this is my flag, I'm putting it on this policy, and here are the options that I put out to pay for it. There are ways to rebut claims by your opponent in a civil way, without being vicious.
And I think I wrote the damn bill. That whole meme is kind of like a way to reclaim that, okay, regardless of what anyone is saying, not naming names here, but we're all claiming that this whole idea called Medicare for All is really nice and really fun. Guess who's been fighting for it for the last 40 years? My name is Bernard Sanders and I'm running for president. That's kind of his way of doing it without being very confrontational.
He's not salty. He's not a salty guy.
I would slightly push back in saying that Bernie, by being the runner-up last time, has the least to explain about himself. I would say that Bernie could do a better job of reframing himself because the CNN moderators are gonna, and they have said oh, the country doesn't want to go socialist. We don't want open borders. They're trying to write the narrative for him. I think Bernie could do a stronger job of reclaiming that and stating what his narrative is while addressing that the media is asking this from this skewed point of view.
I think so
I'd like
too,
to see that more, and I think we'll see that more as we get through primaries, as the rubber starts to hit the road. What's going on with Buttigieg? Just randomly.
Yeah, so he put a lot of energy in Iowa, and it did pay off for him a little bit. You're seeing him surge in the polls. I think he's banking on Biden dropping out, and then he would get Biden's voters to support him. That's a calculation he's making. I don't know how accurate that is.
I think Morning Consult says that Biden's second choice voters tend to go to Warren because Warren's really.
Interesting.
I remember, and the last time I checked up on this really closely was a couple months ago. So this might be wrong, but Warren was really good at being people's second choice.
Interesting.
So that's a good electoral play for her. I can see Buttigieg getting some of Beto's voters now that he's out, but it's slim pickings.
So The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast.
Oh, you mean the podcast that you were briefly in?
I was briefly in it this morning, and it was exciting because I really liked the podcast. I really do like that podcast. But anyway, they talked about in a recent episode how Buttigieg had put all this time and energy and money into Iowa. And the reason why he did that was because in the Democratic primaries between Obama and Hillary Clinton, Obama is a no-name politician, no one cares, no one's excited about him. And there was this big event, Democrats have it every election cycle, a general election cycle. And so Obama gives this incredible speech. And that really put him on the right path, right? That really made people start paying attention to him. And so Buttigieg was hoping to do the same thing, but his speech, he's not like Obama when
he's not as invigorating. And
exactly.
Also, Obama, I look back and I go almost, oh, how did I kind of fall for it? But I was a different person, it's different politics. But Buttigieg lacks the sort of, Obama was really great at selling authenticity. You really believed he had it.
Right.
And sometimes I still believe he has authenticity, but like other times, especially more of his recent comments on political correctness, I understand that, oh, he rose saying he was going to be this person who's going to bring in change, who's going to be a kind of a different voice and a different vibe to government. But no, he rose up to become one of the elites, one of the establishment. And so Pete Buttigieg kind of comes built in with that. He's not even good at selling that. Like, he's good at telling stories and like wasping poetic, or whatever good phrases for you English majors. But like, he's not good at actually convincing me that he's not, that he's listening to voters as opposed to the people from Facebook that he appointed to his campaign. Like, he's not showing that.
And also remember, it wasn't just about coming off as authentic, although I agree that's a huge part of it. It's also what Obama was selling in 2008 and what Buttigieg is selling today. In 2008, after 2 disastrous terms of the Bush administration, people wanted what? They wanted hope, they wanted change. And that is what Obama campaigned on. What's Buttigieg campaigning on? His campaign so far from like my read of it, and I know other people might have different perspectives, is that's too much hope and change. Like, we need to dial it back and we need to be practical and we need to do realistic things. That's not gonna invigorate people. It's not gonna resonate with as many people as Obama's message did.
Right.
So I think that that's hurting him. And remember, he started off by claiming he was supportive of some of these progressive policies, including Medicare for all. But like many of the other candidates, he flip-flopped on that.
Yeah.
I mean, flip-flop isn't even the right word. He never really supported it to begin with, in my opinion.
This is a really in the weeds thing, but it's post-game, so whatever. Medicare for all literally doesn't work with like a private addition to it. Because the whole idea is, I'll be really nerdy. There's a thing in insurance called risk pools. And the basic idea is that everyone pays into the risk pool because this big bucket of money that the insurance company has is used that when you get sick, they'll pay for it, they'll cover it. That's kind of, in a broad way, how insurance works. The problem with insurance in the United States is that there are a bunch of different risk pools that are all over the place. So some insurance companies have a base of people who are really wealthy, and so all their insurance stuff gets handled. Whereas you have people who are under state insurance programs like Medi-Cal, or ones that are run by the government that have tiny risk pools, so they can't actually pay for these things. They keep going into debt.
Yes.
Note that Republicans want to cut them still, but that's a different point. And you have a single payer system. All of the money from the insurance system is going into this one pool.
Exactly.
It's literally the most efficient way to run this process. So that way, everyone who's healthy and paying into it, it's good, it's all good, but when you need it, it's there. And it's there in abundance, and we're not overpaying for it either. Because again, single payer systems with like a one risk pools kind of system, they're not paying as much money. They're wasting money on a per capita basis.
Yeah, I love the way that you just explained that. Because, and this is not an exact comparison, but I like to compare it a little bit to how the private prison model works. Now, keep in mind, private prisons aren't actually private. They're funded by taxpayer money, but they are run like private companies with investors and all that stuff, so they have a profit motive. So what do? They only take in the least expensive inmates to imprison, and then they leave all of the inmates with, like, let's say mental health issues or other physical health issues to the state or the federal government. And then it's more costly to imprison those individuals, right? So the same thing would happen in this 2-tiered system where you have a public option, right? And then you have the private insurers still intact, and the private insurers can just say, no, we're only gonna take in like the healthiest people. And then everyone else is left to the public system. And it's, yeah, you're right. It totally messes up that risk pool and it makes it more costly.
Yeah, it's fundamentally just underfunded and doesn't really work well.
Exactly.
And that's why we need Medicare for all, everybody.
Yeah, this was a very substantive post game.
I like
Thank you,
this.
Dan.
This is fun. Happy to bring the substance. Let's do this another time.
And Dan is like my podcast muse because he comes across the best podcasts, and I've learned so much from them. So you should check out his podcast. It's called Audio Face. And just a quick summary of what you guys talk about.
Yeah, so each week, me and my best friend Sean, we talk about the week in music news, culture, stuff about like TI will probably be on that podcast. It's a lot kind of like old school, let's say, where we're kind of just kicking back, not taking it too seriously, talking about news, talking about music we like, maybe saying provocative things that I would hope people who I work with don't hear, but it's fun.
No, it's a good podcast,
Yeah.
and Dan is such an incredibly smart guy. He helped produce on the main show for a while. Now he produces our election specials. So every time we have an election special, this is the genius behind it, and he's organizing it and planning
One of many people who work behind the scenes to make it happen.
But when it comes to like organizing the people and like organizing which videos we're gonna like, he does such a great job, and we're lucky to have you, Dan.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Anna. It's great to work with you.
All right, well, that does it for the post game. Cenk will be back tomorrow. See you guys soon.
I care. That's it. You can't let that happen to me.